Sorry, we're just checking sound here. Good evening and welcome to the City Council special meeting and mini retreat this Monday, June 24th, 2024. For the City Council, thanks you for being a part of your city government. At special meetings, the council takes formal action on specific items that are listed in the agenda, and during workshops, which we'll continue on to later, we only discuss issues with no formal action item taken. Agenda packets are available on the City of Pasco's website at www.pasco-wa.gov/agenda. For those in attendance, they're here on the back table to my right or your right as you enter. The meeting is being televised on PSC channel 191 on Spectrum Cable in Pasco and in Richland, and is streamed on the city's website, YouTube channel, and GoToWebinar. I will note that for tonight, there will be no Facebook Live video. So for anyone looking for that, hopefully you're not on Facebook looking for it. But if you're not on Facebook looking for it, it will not be on Facebook Live, and we will. You'll need to find one of the alternative means that I just mentioned. And then this and previous city council meetings are available on the city's website. Typically, I announce Mr. Cruz's presence, our Spanish interpreter. I don't see him tonight, so looks like he's not here. So with that, can we get a roll call?
Yes. Council members, Barajas.
Present.
Blaisdell.
Present.
Grimm.
Here.
Harpster.
Present.
Morales.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Milne.
Present.
And Mayor Serrano.
I am here.
Great.
If y'all can please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And I do apologize that we're a few minutes late. We had some technical difficulties as evidenced by our lack of Facebook Live. So with that, we're going to move on to item number 4 in our agenda, which is ordinances and resolutions not relating to hearings. We have 2 items here. Item A, resolution number 4463, Broadmoor TIF, that's tax increment financing area. Amendment number 3 with PBS for engineering services. It looks like Director Sarah, you are going to be reporting here.
Good evening, council members and mayor. We are presenting to you a 3rd amendment for this contract with PBS Engineering. PBS Engineering was selected to perform engineering services in the tax increment finance area starting a few years back, with support that was related specifically to the creation of the TIF area and then move on to design phases. They have been the engineer of record for both the grading project that is completed, the utility project that is underway, and 2 other intersection projects that will cover the Broadmoor area improvements or the Broadmoor corridor improvements. Now, this 3rd amendment will address the need for design services upcoming through Sandifer extension and Road 108 extension. So additional improvements that were part originally of TIF, but we didn't have the ability to contract with them at that time, nor we knew what the timeline would be for those projects. If we advance the slide, I think we may have a map to show you. Oh yes, there we are. So you are seeing right there where the work is currently occurring as part of the work that PBS has performed for us as far as design. And then if you advance one more slide, you're seeing the proposed amendment is the $929,000 for the next phase of design. Original contract was small because we began the work, as I said, for just the creation of TIF, was support on creating those estimates and evaluating conceptual design throughout that area. And then amendments number 1 and 2 were for the design of the phases that are well underway now. And with that, I am happy to provide any answers to questions.
Thank you. Do we have any questions or comments from council? Hearing none. This doesn't require public comment, right, Mr. Ferguson, at this point?
I'm sorry, I couldn't.
This doesn't require public comment at this point, correct?
No, you
It's
could
the
allow
only-
it if you
it's not
want,
a
but
hearing, right?
you'll have to.
Okay, we do have our 2-minute timer listed. It is a special meeting, so I guess if there's anyone in the here in person that would like to speak, seeing none, Mr. Melny.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to approve resolution number 4463, authorizing the city manager to execute amendment number 3 to the professional service agreement with PBS Engineering and Environmental Incorporated for the Broadmoor Tax Increment Funding Design Project.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And I think I heard an aye. Yeah, no,
Aye,
that's
yes.
okay. Okay. Hearing any nays? Hearing none, it passes unanimously. Moving on to item B, resolution number 4464, 2025 to 2030 Transportation Improvement Plan, and this will be Mr. Gonzalez.
Good evening, Mayor and members of council. Staff is presenting to you tonight the final draft of the 2025-2030 Transportation Improvement Program as expressed in previous staff presentations. The proposal includes 51 projects, 11 of them are new. The estimated cost over the 6-year time frame is just over $190 million, with the total cost of all projects just over $270 million, $70 million, with various funding sources secured and planned grants, local funds, and private contributions. The next slide has the proposed list of all the projects, and this list in particular, obviously it's hard to see on the screen, but is intended to show sort of the projects throughout the cascading tip timeline. It doesn't necessarily represent the priority of the project, so if there's funding available due to funding from a state, local, regional, or federal agency, staff will certainly apply for those funds and apply them appropriately to ensure that any of these projects can move up and be completed as they can be. The next slide highlights the new projects proposed, and in particular wanted to call out the 11th added project, that is the 182 interchange feasibility study. That was a result of council feedback and certainly hearing a lot from community members over the past several weeks about some of the challenges that they experience on our transportation network, along with the neighborhood traffic calming program, a program to address the gaps in the bicycle and pedestrian system, and the comprehensive safety action plan. Those were some of the key themes that we heard throughout our engagement efforts, and those programs and projects are intended, or studies are intended to address those comments. The next slide is just a map of the projects throughout the entire city. And then on the next slide is a screenshot of the website and the interactive map and dashboard that has been produced with the help of the city's IT and GIS staff. So really appreciate their help in putting together a really easy to navigate comprehensive website with all the projects on here. You can zoom in. On the left, you can select a particular project. It'll pop up with all the attributes. And then, although we don't show it on this presentation, there's a dashboard component that'll show you kind of number of projects per year, funding per year, etc. So pretty, from our perspective, pretty cool map, an interactive website to show with the public. On the next slide is a summary of all of the comments that we received throughout these engagement efforts. The full comments are attached to the staff report for council and public review. And as shared last week, there was a lot of of feedback regarding desire of planning the infrastructure along with the growth, so both things happening at the same time, opportunities for increased recreational usage, safe walking and biking paths, important to the community. There were concerns for traffic flow, safety, just to accommodate the city's current population, but certainly with nearly 60,000 residents that'll call Pasco home in the next 15 to 20 years, important to keep that infrastructure up to date along with that growth. Again, the full comments are attached to the staff report as exhibit for council review. And then the last slide just summarizes the meetings and public workshops that we've had both with City Council and with the public. So began in May 28th with a workshop, several outreach events throughout the entire city between June 4th and June 11th. A lot of feedback also collected online via email and comments. Those are all attached for council review as well. And then last week had the list with council as part of the staff report. And today we bring back to you a recommendation for approval along with a resolution for your review and approval. That concludes this presentation. Both myself and Director Sarah are happy to answer any questions you have for us this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any questions or comments from council? Mr. Perales.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I just have a couple, two comments. One of them on, I know I see Road 44 and Road 36 widening projects on the list. I just want to make a note that I would like, and we're not in the design stage for those projects, but I would like to see a canal bridge bike walking path over that canal right there. It's really unsafe, and now with that new gas station, I have a lot of neighbors reaching out. Told them, you know, I'm sure that could be added to those projects when we get there. But I just want to put it on the record that we need to do something about that, because I'm sure a lot of kids right now are riding their bicycles to that gas station, and they essentially have to go across the street because the other side has a sidewalk, but the one that kind of straight from the neighborhoods doesn't. You would actually have to go across the street, and it's really unsafe. There's a lot of people who speed right there on Road 44. So I just wanted to get that on the record. And then also just know, hopefully next year, even though we didn't see a lot of participation, I would like to see this bumped up a little bit more instead of starting on May 28th, maybe the beginning of May, and then have that May to June, to the end of June time to get public comment and have that outreach. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Perales. Do we have any other questions or comments from council? Okay. Again, no public comment is needed, but since we have very few folks here, does anyone have any comments on this? Go ahead. You got 2 minutes. Yeah, come up to the mic. That's all good. Just pop. There are two buttons. There's one that's got a mouth, and it should be on your right. Yeah. You'll see a red light on the mic. There you go. You're on.
All right, awesome. I live on Road 56, and we're through street from Sylvester to Court. And the roads on the donut hole are really, really narrow, and I don't see anything about expanding that. And so what's happened on our particular street is every time someone builds a new house, they widen the section to the new house or to the new road. But then you have these chunks and funnels, and our kids are going down the street riding their bikes or people walking their dogs, and there's nowhere for them to go. And there's multiple streets down in that area. And then, like, looking into the underlying land use designation of R1 for the donut hole, there's so many streets down there, and I teach those kids that they're not safe in the first place. Like, kids are trying to get off of the road because cars are going down there at 40 to 50 miles an hour. Now, it's not a lot of cars, but when people are in a hurry, it's dangerous. And so I just wanted to put comment on that, because I don't know, like the public outreach stuff that I see where it just doesn't look like there's a ton of people, and there's not a lot of notice for people to get there, but there's a lot of people concerned about it. And I think if we got out there and there was better places to go and put information out, I think it would be helpful. I coach golf at the high school, and Sun Willows is packed, and you could spend a day there. And I just really want to put that on the record, because there's so many community members that are concerned about what's happening to the density increase and the roads that we have, and widening chunks I don't think is a really good idea. And that's it. Am I off?
Thank you. Appreciate that. Anyone else? Okay, with that, thank you for the comment, and I'm sure staff's taken note of that. Those comments, several comments that you laid forth. Mr. Milne.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to approve resolution number 4464, adopting the 2025-2030 6-year transportation improvement program for the city of Pasco for the purpose of guiding the development, design, and construction of local and regional transportation improvements.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, passes unanimously as well. Now we're moving on to item number 5, 5A. 5 is mini retreat discussion items. Item 5A is discussion of the 2024 to 25 city council goals and city manager work plan, and we will have city manager Lincoln present here.
Thanks, Council. So this evening we've got in the packet the list of projects that staff put together based on the conversation that you had in your retreat. Really just looking for direction for staff to make sure it's a comprehensive list and or what needs to be added to it to make sure that we have the direction to carry forward the direction that council's looking for. So not a lot of direction from staff to you all, just looking for what's the, did we nail it? Did we need to add a lot to it? We can certainly bring it back in other iterations. I'd also let you know that while we're 20 minutes into this meeting, certainly under miscellaneous of the next meeting, if there's a desire to continue the conversation, or of course we can start another meeting early to make sure that you have time to adequately cover these two topics. But just looking for feedback from you all tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Lincoln. Do we have any questions or comments from council? Mr. Grimm.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And really, I just wanted to say hats off to City Manager Lincoln. I think you did a great job of encapsulating our goals and priorities. I just see Chief Roski out there, and one of the things we were talking about was police presence, and I would just add a highlighter to that, a little bit or underline or bold, just, near and dear to our heart, some of those conversations we've had lately about Peanuts Park, and, I think about along the river there and those kind of things. So, yeah, just some emphasis there, but no, I think you did a really good job, and like I said, last time we discussed this, let's go implement it now, so thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Grimm. Mr. Harpster.
Yeah, I have a lot more comments than that, so maybe I'll just take it slide by slide. They're all good comments. So first, I like do we have the slides for this?
Yeah. I'm not sure we have the actual breakdown that's in the council packet that's in the slide form. Okay. So this is the abridged.
So with the kind of main slide that lists the 7 or 8 there, under community safety, we put promote proactive approaches for the strategic investment of infrastructure, staffing, and equipment. And I'd like to see this one reworded a little bit. During our retreat, we discussed having a more targeted approach to reducing crime. Didn't necessarily discuss infrastructure equipment, though I understand that that's part of it. But we'd really like to see this reworded in a more specific manner to be focused on crime prevention and reduction. Again, in like the one sentence format that it is, a quick at a glance prevention reduction. Next slide for me. Quality of life. The second one down, good other parks investments. And we've been talking about, it'll probably be done soon, but we'd like to add Peanuts North on here. Like I said, I know we've already started discussing it, but put it on here would be a nice quick win to continue rolling with the other stuff on there. And then my other comment on this one was the aggressive timeline on downtown lighting. Getting that done, within a year from now. Like that, I think that's at the priority that it should be. Complete comprehensive plan update. A question on that, does that really need to be on here? Is that required by statute? So it's less of a goal and more of a requirement.
I would agree with that comment that it's something that's going to happen regardless of if it makes it on the list. I think it was just something that we wanted to capture that had come up in the discussion. So. Okay,
so then maybe like the Peanuts North, we leave it on there, and the ones that we can quickly check off and do is good motivation. Study fire sprinkler system in downtown buildings. It looked like based on the timelines here, this has been going on for about 12 months, and so just curious if there's any results to share to date, how that's been going. I know in the past there was a couple business owners down there with concerns, and just wondering how that's coming along.
Sure. Good question. So actually it's probably been going on for a lot longer than 12 months, as I'm getting the nod from the audience. I think that's one where the issue has been investing dollars into privately held properties. And so to try and deal with the gifting issue, we've been talking to our federal delegation staff about trying to get a change to specifically the way that CDBG dollars can be used. They're aware of the desire to make the change. I don't have an update on how long that's going to take. It will literally take an act of Congress to make the change. So that's been one avenue that's been pursued. Another avenue that had been discussed was asking for the city to put in the infrastructure to get the standpipes to the buildings themselves, which would help lower the cost for the building owners to then invest in the actual hardware inside the buildings. I think we might have a rough price estimate for that, and I don't know if we know off the top of our heads, but that would be something we can send an email to the council, and then that would have to be a budget discussion on how you want to proceed on something like that. So those are probably the two biggest areas that we've talked about, and then I think when we have Mr. Hendren come forward, we probably have some questions about interpretations of the code and probably need some council direction on that as well, because there may be some areas where if a building is not deemed necessary to have sprinklers for the use, then that alleviates a lot of the problems that the building owners are facing themselves.
Appreciate that. Okay, under financial sustainability, the first one, city finances. I think I just need some more information on this because the work plan items seem more like just items, not necessarily goals to complete. Municipal Finance 101, trends and forecasts, are those, what exactly is the intent with all that?
I think the intent here is to make sure that the council has the best information to make sound decisions that continue in that vein of financial sustainability. So in previous cities that I've worked in, putting together some documents that give a little more heft to background on things like what the financial status is, what the long-term forecasting are. Municipal Finance 101 is something that's just kind of generally a useful document for the public as well. So it's sort of a catch-all for better informing both council and the public of sort of the financial position of the city.
Okay, so, and that's kind of what I thought. It seemed like the goal there is just make sure that we're informed as a body up here. And then, Ms. Buckley, the budget by statute needs to be adopted by the 31st of December, correct? Okay. And then I think I saw in one of the emails Mr. Lincoln sent recently that the first presentation will be August. Are we still on track for that?
Yes, we are.
Okay,
We are
cool.
working our way to that meeting. Thank you.
I think I'm gone that day. Community Transportation Network. It's just like with the tip, we just discussed. There's a lot that we could fill this slide up with, but I like that we've kept it relatively concise, just 4 things, and really just one major project to focus on. Road 76, Councilmember Grimm has kind of inspired me to think maybe we could get this rolling a little bit. And it seems like council and staff are in lockstep on that, and I know both sides are petitioning our state legislature to assist with that. Question on this, the last item, traffic calming, estimated time frame to complete is 5 years from now. So what does staff envision this process entailing over the next 5 years?
So I'll ask Ms. Sarah to weigh in on this, but there's been a pretty thorough analysis that I'm not sure is completed just yet about sort of the hot spots for speeding, specifically in the neighborhoods, because all of you have brought forward some personal experience or you're hearing from your constituency. So hopefully it's providing information to make data-driven decisions on where the best areas are for speed calming, traffic calming.
Thank you. So we receive a grant that allows us to collect data throughout the city. There were 110 locations, something like that, where we collected data on both volumes and also speed. And with that information that has been analyzed, and we have a draft report to us, which is getting finalized, we plan to come back and show you, okay, these are the patterns we're seeing, these are the type of measures we should be able to apply based on the type of road, the configuration of the road, and have basically a prioritized approach to traffic calming throughout the city. So the first big effort was done with federal dollars. There are some dollars left to do implementation. And then, of course, we have in our TIP, our program that will allow us to continuously kind of chip away at these issues and evaluate their effectiveness.
And I think that's why it's a longer term project, is because it's probably making a couple investments every year due to the cost and the funding source, or lack of a non-general fund funding source.
Okay. Community safety. So just like with the no sit, no lie ordinance that we passed, I think it was last week, like one of our goals on this section to be focused on creative and proactive approaches to crime reduction and prevention. And I know we talked about that a lot at the retreat, that specifically was one of the goals. Some members of council, maybe not all, but a few, meeting with some of the PD staff, just brainstorming ideas on what we could do to help them, and what they've seen other jurisdictions across the state or maybe the country do that has worked and been beneficial. So we'd definitely like to see that added on here. And additionally, something, I know there's not much we can do, but something that commits us to helping where we can with the ongoing public defender crisis. And I think it needs to be a priority of this council to do what we can to support our local courts in that endeavor. Otherwise, all the ordinances and laws in the world won't matter at all. So, and then lastly, for this community safety section is Emergency Communications Center. And we had the presentation from, I forget his name, but Richland's assistant city manager, and our commitment to the region, not just
Drew and Jay.
Yeah. And so ensuring that as one of the main five that we're doing our part. Economic vitality. As a whole, it seems like this entire slide aims to make it easier to do business here in Pasco. And we hear from some businesses who think that it's so hard to do business in Pasco. And whether there's merit to that or not, it's another matter. But I think this is an area, again, where staff and council are in lockstep in improving the processes it takes to do business here in Pasco. And so no questions on this one, just a comment that I like what I'm seeing on here. And really, I think it's a reflective of what our residents want. And then last one, city identity. The last two slides, city identity and other, kind of combine. There's a strong emphasis on ensuring that the way that we're doing things is the best way, and that we're not just doing it because it's the way that's always been done. And so the last two items, are not things that can be accomplished overnight, but they're on here as a priority. And I think what would be helpful is over the next few years, as these are ongoing, I guess a couple years, is just some periodic updates as to how they're coming along, so that they're not just on the list and forgotten about. Not that they would be, but it would be helpful just to have a check-in 5-minute presentation every once in a while. So that's all I got.
Thank you, Mr. Harpster and Mr. Perales.
Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate Councilmember Harpster's comments. He hit a lot of nails in the head. So my comments will be very, very brief. I want to go ahead and double down on it. I would like to see a workshop time and time where we bring back this council plan and go over where we at on a lot of these things. Where are some updates and stuff like that. I would like just to know that we're actually making some concerted efforts throughout the year and going forward. Also want to double down on the 911 communication system. I'm not sure if the county is going to elect to do a sales tax increase, but I would like for our city to support that. We need our first responders, like on days like today. I would hate to see a fire like that happen in North Franklin County and we don't have ways to communicate. So I think when you have those red flag warnings and that wind and you have all these fires happening, those are the individuals we got to think about. And also too, it was noted on Facebook a while ago, is Levy spelled wrong under quality of life? It says it's Levee. Should it be Levy? Okay, just making sure. I saw someone pointing that out, and I was like, I better write that down and get that fixed. Okay, other than that, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments to council? City Manager Lincoln, as to the 911, Sheriff Raymond called me, and I think I don't remember if I told you, but he's looking for some time. It was probably a couple weeks ago, so sorry, Sheriff. And I think it was in regards to that issue. I was on the road, not surprisingly, and it's, yeah, you know. So anyway, if I haven't mentioned that to you, if you can ping him.
We'll get him on the agenda. You bet. Absolutely.
Just check in with him.
Yeah.
Then we'll commit to the agenda.
Gotcha. Okay. Copy that.
No, I suspect it will have value, and I'm sure everyone else has seen the commentary he's put out there with his letters to and in regards to this issue. So it'd be good to hear from our sheriff, obviously, as to how he thinks, and certainly if that pokes either of our two chiefs out there in our audience. I don't know if there's something that's worth coordinating with him or just listening and then having some sort of response from our folks. I'll leave that to y'all to figure out the best way to approach it. One thing that I do think that back to Mr. Harpster's economic vitality, I wonder if we may capture this. I know we're doing some revisions to some of our building codes and some of those things. I know Mr. Gonzalez is taking some seriously heavy laboring oars and revising some of those codes. I know we're in process of that, and I know there's more forthcoming. I wonder if that might be worth putting on this as a tracker to, you know, again, it backs up the economic vitality and also the quality of life of, hey, we're hearing your concerns and we're responding in X, Y, or Z. So, kind of to echo what Mr. Harpster said, where we're winning, let's just point that out to the public of we're listening to you and we're engaging and our staff is taking, you know, that step forward. I see no other lights. With that, staff, questions, comments, concerns? I suspect you were probably planning to bring this back in a week or so, but do you have enough time?
Yeah, I think we can probably have it for the next workshop, probably is what makes the most sense, so that we can just make sure everything's buttoned up. As soon as I get it done, I'll email it out to you guys too, and just if there's feedback, I can obviously make those changes on the fly and get it back in front of you. I think there's probably some value in having it adopted. It puts a bigger stamp of approval from the council on it. So as soon as I get the green light from you all, we'll bring it for a regular meeting. But I just want to make sure that we're capturing it all and that we've wordsmithed it and also spell checked everything appropriately. Thanks for the catches. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks. And certainly if you need a little more time to figure it out, don't hesitate. With that, we're going to move on to item 5B, which is discussion of city council rules or conduct. This is going to fall back, bless you, in your lap, Mr. Lincoln.
This originated again from the previous council retreat. Our law firm had an attorney who put together a draft document that covered, I think, some pretty broad rules, and Mr. Ferguson can certainly answer any questions that you might have from that draft document. But it seemed like there was some desire to have a little bit more formality with the council as far as rules, guidelines. But happy to have the discussion again tonight and just see where you'd like staff to go with this. And Eric can answer any questions if there's specifics.
So with that, do we have any particular questions or comments from council? Mr. Prowse.
Thank you, Mayor. The only one that I don't know, had like a weird feeling about was like having perhaps, you know, your laptop, your phone and all that stuff, and that if people are reaching out to you during the meeting. And so I'm thinking like, okay, so do I just bring my city council phone with me if I'm here? Don't bring both phones. People see me glancing at my phone. Could be my wife. Hey, get some milk on the way home. Like, do I need to give my phone up because they see me looking at it? And so that was kind of like my only, because like City Manager Lincoln said, it seemed pretty broad. And so that was the only one that kind of gave me heartburn. I think everything else is, you know, pretty straightforward. And it seems really easy to understand and follow. And so that was the only one I kind of wanted some more clarification on. Yeah, on, looks like the use of electronic devices during council meetings. That was the section.
Sure. Yeah. So this is as you can all imagine, this is an evolving topic, considering that there's a cross section of, you know, you have technology and the law and all those things, and you know the old adage of technology moving at light speed and the law moving at glacial speed. So we're a little behind. The law is behind where technology is with regard to what you can and can't do, and it is super confusing right now. So, but to answer your question, this language, I think the goal of this language is to make sure that as long as you're not conducting city business, you should be fine. Now, I say should because what that means is oftentimes you will be on your personal device and you may not be conducting business, but that still won't stop. Excuse me, that won't stop a public records request. Somebody will want to say, who are you typing to or whatever. That happens more frequently than you'd think. But so a lot of people stay with I walk in just like you put your phone in a basket or your bag or whatever, and don't even go there because it's just not worth it. You can focus on your laptop. Everything that you're doing is on your city laptop. Anything that you're doing is going to be covered under the Public Records Act. It's going to be retained, so you're not going to have to worry about those types of things. And staff can, if there is a public records request, staff can really handle that internally. So that's the easiest way. So, but that's probably not reality because a lot of times, as you say, folks need to stay in touch, and so there's other times. But really, what it comes down to is, as long as you don't cross that line from using your personal device to, quote, conduct city business in your role, like texting each other, texting a constituent, that's when it can get really murky. So that's why this is designed, and there's a probably even more recent than this draft article. MRC's done another round of this because it is constantly evolving. And it was a topic for discussion at our last conference. So, but yeah, yes, the safe route is to just stay off of all your devices. But as long as you're not conducting city business on any of your devices, you're going to be fine, I think.
Anything else, Mr. Prowse? Okay. Mr. Harpster.
Thank you. Just a fair warning, I expect I'll take us to 7 o'clock.
You can be fast, I'm sure.
What's that?
I said I'm sure you can be fast.
First question, Mr. Fergus, how many of these rules, give or take, are already required by statute to begin with? Because a lot of it seemed to be driven by our own PMC and by our CW. I was just curious.
Well, it's interesting. You would think when you read this, cover to cover, and I went back and read it, cover to cover before this meeting, and you would think that the way it reads, that most of this is already covered in state law. Most of it's not. That's the irony, is that there's very, very little guidance as to what councils can and can't do with related to managing their own affairs throughout their meetings. So what we currently have is kind of a combination of kind of a patchwork of the state requirements, and some of those are in the Open Public Meetings Act, and those deal with the processes, and there's other areas of the RCW as well that deal with processes, for example, of being able to have a new council member, right? Selection of a new council member. So that little dance is kind of spelled out. You have to have the interview out here, then you can go back and discuss, then you come back out and you have to vote in open session. So those types of things are, and you probably saw a reference to some of those things in here. And so there's a lot of that stuff in there, but it's really hodgepodge. And then our code doesn't have a whole lot more. It's pretty sparse. So I think what this does is really tries to kind of fill in those gaps. But it's supposed to be general, and the idea is so that it kind of sets a baseline. You can, as you can imagine, get really into the weeds in terms of types of behavior and all kinds of stuff that some councils get into, and obviously those can be problematic for much other reasons because they can get weaponized because somebody doesn't like someone's opinion, so they can say that they're in violation of the rules because they didn't like how they said it or something like that. So those are just things to be mindful of. But yeah, this is the goal of this is to basically try to fill those gaps. But to answer your question, more of this is really your decision than the state law or even the city code.
Appreciate that. Yeah, since our retreat, I know I brought up, I don't want anybody to wear hats and stuff, and I've thought that I cared less about the hats, and I already joked about this with Councilman Perales, but and more just ensuring that we do our jobs to our the best of our abilities. So with that in mind, then page 3, under duties of the mayor, I like that we've got under the 4A disruptions. We had a gentleman a month or so ago who refused to listen to Mayor Serrano's instructions to keep his comments to 3 minutes, and then became combative despite the repeated instructions to wrap up his comments. and then was allowed to continue because they were just kind of like, well, you know, we don't have rules, so I guess we'll allow it. And then, you know, every other person can come up and do the same thing. And, you know, I don't want to, part of the intent for me for these rules is to not allow our meeting to get hijacked by other folks. So like that one. On page 4, under general duties of council members, 7B, I'm glad to see this one on here because, you know, personal grudges, vendettas, dislikes, etc. I don't think should come up at all. And for example, I have no idea which staff members here, you know, hate each other. I imagine none do, but I have no idea, and that's the way it should be. And, you know, upon the same token, then, if Mayor Serrano and I, for example, just hate each other, that's fine, I guess, in one regard, but the public shouldn't know that because we're up here to do a job. And so I like that this speaks to that and, you know, create some rules. And national politics is so polarizing. I really don't think we need to be at this micro-local level. And I really think the goal, and I think all 7 of us share the same goal, that we're here to serve the people of Pasco and not get crazy in that endeavor with each other. I wrote in my notes, and I think this was the place where I intend for it. I want to ensure we don't have surprise public hearings on items. For instance, if a group of people shows up with the intent to share an opinion about an item that there's not a public hearing already scheduled for, you know, they have their opportunity during public comment, and I want to make sure that it's not randomly allowed later. Again, other people who wanted to speak on a topic that was presented earlier in the meeting but weren't given that opportunity, they could get upset. And so it just keep things straight and makes no exceptions. And the you know, Martin Luther King Jr. Center, we thought there was going to be some people, and during the public comment opportunity, that would have been the time, but no other time. And then that keeps us council members, you know, when there's a surprise hearing, I get a little worried, like, oh, you know, wondering what's going to happen. Page 6, council contacts with staff. I'm at 5B near the bottom. And just more clarifying this section, it sounds like, you know, I can't say to Mr. Lincoln, you know, Mr. Lincoln, I want you to promote Chief Crowley to Public Works Director. But we can ask questions like, hey, how's the search for a new Public Works Director coming? Are you considering anybody internal? Is that an appropriate interpretation?
Yes, so this is one that's highly regulated, and essentially the rule, what it comes down to is where that line gets crossed is when council members want to kind of exert that authority or that power over your one employee, which is the city manager, to then go and do something else. And obviously you're allowed to ask questions, you're allowed to do whatever you want in terms of asking the city manager, but you cannot go that step further, and you can even express your displeasure at whatever action is being taken at the staff level. But where it crosses the line is when you then ask your one employee to go take action on your behalf, and then that's where we get in big trouble. To essentially, we want, you know, obviously that would never happen here, but you would not be surprised how often people are like, you know, off with his head at that meeting kind of thing. So yeah, that's just where the line has to be. It's like you're always allowed. I don't have the statute to memorize off the top of my head, but essentially what it comes down to is there's nothing, whilst council cannot give direction to staff, there is nothing in an open meeting to prevent council members from inquiring about any of the actions that have taken place through the city manager. Now, the city manager gets to direct how you get that answer. So it's either he or she, or they can delegate that to some other staff member to respond to that. So, but it's a fine line, but it's also a very harsh situation if you cross that line. So that's why there's that distinction.
Okay, that's kind of what I thought. And to your point, being harsh, it could be really potentially awkward. Mm-hmm. You know, and so anyways, page 8, council committees. First, I just want to say I think council committee should be the exception and not the norm. We've only had one that's been good, and I just put a thought out there for the rest of the council to think about before we finalize these. Is the requirement for 3 plus an alternate? It seems like a lot. And you could flip it the other and say, well, if there's only 2, then we shouldn't be having the subcommittee. And so just some thoughts to think about over the next couple of weeks on what we want to do with that. I personally could go either way. I'm personally not really interested in any subcommittees ever and would want to try to take care of business here at these meetings, but that's just me not wanting to add meetings. Page 12, use of electronic devices during meetings. The only comment I had on that was that I do like the section being in here. I think we should focus our attention on the matter at hand, but still, like Councilman Perales mentioned, if you know the wife's got an emergency at home, I want to be able to look at my phone and not get in trouble by some other council member who sees me checking my phone. Page 13, conduct during debates. Pretty much the whole section 4. I just like that this is all spelled out. In debates, emotions can run high. We've not really had that happen yet, but this council as a whole is only 6 months in. And so if that time ever came, I think it's good to have these rules already set in place so there's no emotional decisions being made because so-and-so is upset with so-and-so, and it's just, you know, it's already in black and white. And then pages 13, 14, and 15, my only comment here is I'll just encourage everybody up here to become intimately familiar with these 3 pages, which I believe are pretty much straight out of Robert's rules and something we should all be familiar with as far as making motions and what happens in that process. There's been a few times, and it's new council working out the kinks, but there's been a few times where a motion's been made and then discussion has happened before a second has actually been made. And so just some, like I said, working out the kinks and maybe some homework for us.
Just real quick, one of the things that the rules would do that has kind of come up a couple of times already is it would clarify that when someone wants to bring something up as an item on the agenda. So, for example, we've had several times where in miscellaneous discussion, folks have wanted to tackle some things that they feel are very relevant and timely and need to be taken care of right then, and that's fine. It's just but the process is that we're going about it in kind of this ad hoc way. So by being able, as it's defined in the rules, there's a process for that, which is you make a motion, you get a second, you add it to the agenda, then you can talk about it, and so that way nobody feels like the meeting or the miscellaneous discussion section is getting hijacked with personal issues that they, or things that they're really excited about, but others may just want to get out of here, right? That type of situation. So it clarifies that, and also it does, to your point about Robert's rules, that is one of the things that is helpful about this, is that it clarifies that where these rules are silent, Robert's rules backfills. Currently, we follow Robert's rules of order by custom. So it's not in the code, and it's certainly not in the state law, and so it's parliamentary procedure, but we don't have something that we can rely on when we get those tough questions. We have to just do it kind of off the cuff through quote custom. So anyway, this clarifies that.
No, I appreciate that, and that's one thing I like too, is that none of us up here are crazies, but theoretically voters could get a crazy up here that just doesn't follow parliamentary procedure.
I would also say that 5C, we'd need to strike that. That's for a strong. That's a holdover from a strong mayor system where Mr. Serrano wouldn't get to, in a tie vote, get to break it after he already voted twice. Yeah, he doesn't get to vote twice.
On page 15 at the bottom, going into 16. As far as abstentions, I'd like to reword this one specifically so that a council member may abstain from discussion voting on a question for any reason. And there's no need to disclose the reason. And
there is, it's funny, I did not, I was trying my best to, there are some rules related to state law about what the recommendation is, and I don't know what those are off the top of my head. From what I recollect, you do need a valid reason. Just not wanting to vote on a topic is not a suitable reason. But I can't remember if that's something that's a violation of the RCW or if that's a violation of Robert's rules. But I know that's where that comes from. Is that it violates one of those, but I can't remember off the top of my head which one it is. And I apologize, I just didn't get a chance to look it up before we got here. But yeah, abstentions are that is a hot topic. So and whatever, to the extent there's some wiggle room, we could always, folks can, I'll come back with an answer for you.
Almost done. Page 16, 7A. A person addressing the council requests to say, give their name and address for the record. I'd like to change that to give their name and city of residence for the record. And A few people have mentioned that before. I've seen other jurisdictions recently change that, and I think that's just helpful for the folks who might be weary of doing that.
Sure, yeah, I got that marked in my version as well.
And then 7B, any person who causes, so it says in there, any person who causes, yada, 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 making personal attacks, using hate speech, etc. Hate speech to me seems like such a broad stroke reference that I think it'd be more appropriate to either define hate speech or completely remove the word hate altogether and reword it so it states something like making personal attacks using speech that is prejudiced, demeaning, or that's intentionally prejudiced or biased. And that clarifies more. Well, we could theoretically say that the folks who've been coming for weeks protesting about the war in Israel is hate speech to me. I mean, it's not, but it just gets so muddy. But if we specifically say if you're demeaning somebody, prejudicing somebody, being a racist, sexist, etc., that's easier to define.
Right.
And would be, something we wouldn't want to allow anyways.
Yeah, this is a really, I circled that in my version as well, just to make sure that we're in compliance. A lot has changed in the last few years related to this topic, and one of the things that's really interesting is, that people oftentimes come in and think that, well, because this is City Hall and this is a council meeting, this is what they refer to as a traditional public forum, and it's not. It's a limited public forum, and that's why we can limit the amount of people who get to speak and the amount of time. The one thing that we still don't get to do is regulate content, and so some of this stuff starts to get into content, and at the point that the content becomes disruptive, then you get to regulate it, because it's not based on what someone's saying. It's based on the fact that you're not able to carry on your business. So we're going to need to take a close look at that provision, because when I read that, I was like, that seems a little antiquated. So we may be in trouble there.
And frankly, in my opinion, if somebody wants to come here and make those types of comments, then great. They can let the public know how they feel and deal with the consequences. So the last two, page 16E at the bottom, public hearings and appeals, 1C and 1D, the proponent's spokesperson, and then on D, the opponent's spokesperson. It may be beneficial to change that to spokespeople in case there's some kind of an applicant and they have a team of people, or if there's multiple people who want to speak to the same issue. If we leave it at spokesperson, I suppose we could get really technical and say, well, one person only. And then lastly, and you sort of touched on this, Mr. Ferguson, if a number of people wish to speak to a particular topic or issue, then I'd like something worded in here, and I'll email you my notes, that the city council by majority vote may limit at that meeting the total amount of time dedicated to that single issue. And that's been done in the past. I think wouldn't come up often, but would be helpful when it does. There was one meeting that I attended last year where we were literally here till past 11 because of 2 hours of public comments for the same issue. And so it's nice to just, hey, you guys will get 5 people each or whatever. And then lastly, very last page, I just like that under amendment of rules, that there's just a note that these can, are intended to be flexible and adaptable and can change in the future as we kind of feel out what works and what doesn't. So that's all I have. Thanks.
And if you also kind of take a quick glance at I there, enforcement of the rules of procedure. So one of the things that you'll notice in terms of how, what the consequences are for violations and those types of things, you can see from there that it's the whole goal is to not try to be punitive, where it can then turn into somebody makes a complaint, then that complaint goes to an examiner who then reviews it. That really can get cumbersome and really inefficient. So the most of the essentially mostly what would be allowed through sanctions would be through votes of censure or letters of reprimand. So you would be able to publicly, I guess, rebuke that behavior, but at the same time, there's going to be very fine lines that you're not going to be able to give each other $500 fines, because you don't like what someone's saying. I mean, it recently happened. I'm just saying.
With that, do we have any other comments from council? Ms. Blaisdell.
The only thing I'd like to add is on 7B, I see that it says, endeavor to be respectful to other members of city council, even when we have a difference of opinion, different positions, and matters coming before the council, I would like that also to be directed towards the staff. So how we set the tone with the staff and how we address staff questions, because we set the morale. And yes, the city manager is our only employee, but at the same time, it's all in our approach. So I would like us as a council to have something in here that shows that we respect staff when asking questions or when they're presenting.
Section A7B, the endeavor to be respectful of other members of city council, even when there are differences of opinion or different positions on matters coming before the city council.
It says something about respecting us council members, but it doesn't say anything about in the next section with when we're addressing staff. It doesn't say anything about being respectful towards the staff.
Okay.
All right, any other comments? Seeing none, I'll just throw out there, I appreciate 6C, about abstentions. I think that's important that we call out need for a purpose to abstain. And the comments that Mr. Harpster made on committees, my position is whether it's 3, I guess if we don't have, my position is if we don't have a majority of council that's interested in the subcommittee, we fundamentally don't, we won't have one, we won't impanel one. That said, whether it's 2 or 3 who are willing to undertake that representation, I think I'm indifferent. But obviously, and I'd have to reread it, just making sure that such a subcommittee is impaneled by a majority of the council vote. And again, it may be in there. I'd have to look back at it. So those are my only comments. And we've now pushed this meeting to 7:02, almost 7:03, which is pretty darn close. Now we have an exec. No, just kidding. And that'll extend for an extra. No. All right. It's for anyone that's joining us the first time. Just wait. With that, I see no other lights. We're going to go ahead and close out this special meeting and mini retreat. And with that, we can bypass the music and all that, right? Okay, good. With that, welcome to the City Council Workshop Meeting of June 24th, 2024. I got to go ahead and still read all the introduction, right? Stuff, or can we just slide right into number 4? Okay, so we can skip the call to order, the roll call, the Pledge of Allegiance, and we're right on 4. Okay. With that, we're going to move on to item number 4, which is verbal reports from council members. I see Mr. Grimm.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This will be a little more lengthy than usual. I attended the BFCOG meeting last night, which is the Benton Franklin Council of Governments. Several things came out of that meeting. First of all, the public might be interested to know the Blue Bridge is slated to be completed at Christmas. Be a great Christmas present, but it's still a long time coming. And they even have work days scheduled for January, just in case. So that one's going to be with us for a while. We also spoke about the EV infrastructure analysis, counting and mapping charging stations with a cool interactive map in regards to meeting the 2035 all-electric and carbon-free goals. I brought up my concerns about the feedback and discussion that I hear from experts in the energy field that we are woefully short in meeting that goal. The only thing I see the experts in agreement is that we don't have the electric infrastructure to meet that goal. The grid can't take it. On a personal note, with the push from the state to rid us of natural gas in our homes and businesses, gasoline and diesel in our vehicles, our only source of energy for our lives, homes, businesses, and transportation will be entirely from the grid. We talk about how fragile the grid is. I think we are setting ourselves up for disaster by having our sole energy source come from the grid. Another thing that came up from the meeting was our project prioritizations. A lot of people, myself included, last year I couldn't have told you what the BF COG really is and is about, but it is, it's just this conglomerate of all these local cities, prioritizing regional transportation projects and finding the funding for those. And since it was my first cycle, I panicked to find out that this Friday our transportation priorities are due, where each municipality submits our priorities, and then we get a certain amount of votes as members to decide what those priorities are that the Council of Governments is going to go after as a whole to secure funding. I panicked. I texted City Manager Lincoln, hoping they were on the ball, but just making sure we didn't miss this opportunity. But I am happy to report, Mr. Mayor, that not only did City Manager Lincoln inform me that Director Sarah was all over it, but the two projects that I had in mind were the ones they picked also, Road 76 and the US 12 interchange at A Street. So yeah, that's got to be submitted this Friday, and then that process kind of goes throughout the summer as far as selecting those projects, and we are going to push really hard that our Pasco projects are the ones chosen for that. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Ms. Barajas.
Thank you, Mayor. I just briefly want to share real quick. Congratulations to our very new Sergeant Alanis and Sergeant Andrews. I was at their promotion on Wednesday last week. Also did a ribbon cutting on your behalf for Rent Town, formerly Rent to Own. The owner, Casey, took over the franchise basically and renamed it to Rent Town. So congratulations to them. But I do also want to add just real quick, with the closing of Juneteenth week, Juneteenth celebration week, congratulations to the volunteers that were out there doing free haircuts, free clothing. They had a roll arena night. So again, congratulations to the Juneteenth planning committee for a week long of celebration for Juneteenth. That's all I have to share.
Thank you. Seeing no additional lights, I'll just note that a couple of things. One, I did attend the Hanford Area Economic Investment Fund Advisory Committee. It's a mouthful meeting where I've mentioned this before, it looks like we're about to finalize an opportunity for grant funds to come out to municipalities. So for the city, we may want to be on the outlook for that. Obviously, I'm not involved in that subcommittee, and to the extent there may be any conflict, I'll make sure that it's done above board. I think there's maybe $250,000 allocated, so it's not a significant fund, but it's not insignificant either. So I believe engagement letter, potential request for proposal basically, and request for requests will be out there. I do want to note that Mr. Cruz is here in attendance. He's in the back to my right. If there's anyone that needs the interpretation, he's got the headsets back behind staff, and we can rock and roll there. And with that, we will move on to item number 5, which is items for discussion with opportunity for public comment. Now, for anyone that's joining us recently, we used to not have public comment during our workshops, but we do now have public comment during our workshops up to 2 minutes per person and up to a total of 8 minutes. And that's going to allocate two speakers per side, either pro or con. So 2 minutes per person, 2 people per side, up to 4 minutes per side, up to 8 minutes aggregate. So with that, we are going to move on to item letter A, which is Pasco Public Facilities Districts, the Aquatic Facility Management and Operations Overview. Mr. Rice, I don't know if you're just going to slide it over to former Mayor Matt Watkins and Pasco Public Facilities Executive Director present.
Yes, both those things. Both have been beneficial to the city of Pasco, so we thank her for being here this evening. Director Watkins is going to present a brief update on the Aquatics project and get us up to speed on where they're at, and also present a couple of different management and operations options that he'd like us to review and take into consideration. So with that, Mr. Watkins, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rice, and good to see you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. It's great to be back, and also 'tis the season for road projects and BFCOG. So, Councilmember Grimm, I was there before myself, so I know you're feeling and great. It's also great to know that staff's got your back, doesn't it? I came about 7 months ago, did a little bit of an update on what the Pasco Public Facilities District and the Aquatics Facility is up to. I will do a little bit of that tonight, but also the important part, though, is do have a request to ask the city of Pasco to do the management and maintenance for the upcoming aquatics facility. Just a little bit of background to get to that point, though. Wanted to show you, it's a very important announcement happened last week. This is an example, I think, of also the long-term partnership that the PFD and the city had. In fact, the city was even essentially the PFD 20 years ago, and it's with the adoption of a tax measure that the voters approved, the PFD itself has, of course, been going full force on the project. I note, too, that I have Mark Morissette, my board chairman, here this evening, and I might have another couple of supporters this evening show up in the audience. I also know the Pasco School District was thinking about showing up because I think there's a larger theme about Pasco being the Swin City of the Tri-Cities. And I might touch on that again at the end. Just to show you, last week we ended up picking a piece of property which is near and dear to all council members' heart, being part of the Broadmoor project. I circled generally where it's going to be, so if you know where the gravel pit is in section 16, the PFD wants to do 13 acres. And then that's also next door to the city that's going to do 5 acres as part of the deal with Broadmoor for an eventual community center. There's still a possibility of transit possibly going out there, although there are some challenges with that part of it. At the very least, we'd have a bus stop at the place. Wanted to just show you just a little bit of history about how the PFD was created by the city back in, I believe, about 2002. It was a mechanism to actually help the city of Kennewick out with convention center. Portion of the money came back to city's development efforts. And then 2022, you're probably familiar with interlocal agreements. In 2022, after the voters approved the tax measure and the PFD became into high gear, there was a revised agreement because it needs some additional services the council's approved. So now that we are here in 2023 and 24, back to you to consider what I'm calling ILA 3.0. The concept tonight and in your packet were principles that GESA helped develop of what kind of services that would make sense for the city of Pasco that currently has Memorial Pool and 60 or 70 lifeguards and expertise in running recreational facilities could do to help the PFD and treat our water resources in Pasco as more of a unified effort. There's also even a possibility of possibly asking maybe some other cities if you'd like to do unified lifeguards. That's a little beyond what's tonight, but it makes some sense that the PFD is a distinct entity, the project is a distinct item, but most people, I think, are going to associate the aquatics facility with Pasco. So I think there's also some economies of scale that can occur too. If the aquatics facility, I believe, is probably going to need about 90 lifeguards, which is more than Memorial Pool has. So we're talking about, in effect, doubling lifeguards. And so there's going to need to be a spooling up more lifeguard academies, more lifeguards generally in the Tri-Cities. These principles have been in your packet. This is the sales pitch of why it makes sense for the city of Pasco to do it. I would note that we did look at a couple of other models, whether or not the PFD should become its own little mini government agency, hire its own employees and do its own HR and all that sort of stuff. Whether or not to do a third-party management contract like the Kennewick PFD does with the convention center, found that model doesn't probably work as well for an aquatics facility. Meanwhile, of course, Pasco staff have been involved with this project. Mr. Lincoln, Mr. Rice, and others said, hey, we think we could be able to do it with council concurrence. So that's why we're here this evening to ask you. I've already asked the PFD, they've unanimously asked, will the city of Pasco be interested in doing the management and maintenance portion of this contract, or ILA 3.0? I would note, too, that there is a significant amount of resources available to the PFD with a 0.2% sales tax to run this facility. Of course, government agencies, it's not meant to be take advantage of Pasco and the resources there. Vice versa, it's not meant that the Pasco would make money off of the PFD and resources. You would still want to make sure that each of these things are funded as they're separate entities, and we'd be able to do that with a interlocal agreement. That, in essence, is the pitch tonight, and also just to show you kind of a project timeline too, where we've been. Property acquisition took a little longer than I wanted to. I think everybody knows that sometimes it is a challenge talking with our property owner out in the Broadmoor area, but him coming to the table, and also noting too that Rockstar, Ms. Richa Sigdel, coming up with a solution to what seemed to be an intractable issue about how to build a road out to the middle of the community. It's just deepening the ties between the PFD and city staff, and appreciate that. So if you all were to consider doing this, I believe, Jesse can correct me if I'm wrong, the idea would be to have you take a look at it. If you're interested in it, come back at a future vote for you to support it. And if so, we'd then probably come up with ILA 3.0. And then I also threw in here too, our validation for the project is nearly complete. We've been holding off until we got the property sorted. We'll have that next July. I'm pretty sure they'll say, yes, you can go build a facility for the $37 million for a facility of 47 total bonding. And then we got to go get money for it to pay for it. We do have some money saved up from the taxes, but we can't, of course, do the whole 47 without a bond loan. And my goal is to complete the thing in early 2026. So a little combination of a pitch, and then also a little bit of a status update on the project. And I do have a couple pictures if you want to see later. I'd be available for questions, or if Mr. Rice, if I've missed anything that I should have shared.
No, I think that was a great summary. We're standing by. Thanks.
Thank you. I see Mr. Harpster's got a question or a comment.
First, I just want to thank you, Mr. Watkins, for your efforts on this and continued commitment to the city. I think it speaks to our city when former elected representatives continue to stay involved with the city, and you see in other cities where folks get on with their term and they just want to get out of town and go do something else, and so appreciate your continued efforts. And also the comments to the Herald that shine the light on staff, rightfully so. So to clarify my understanding, I just want to make sure I'm on the same page. The PFD would cover the costs of staff needed for the operation. Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. And then, Director Rice, how many additional staff members, or maybe not even additional, would you need to kind of commit to that?
Well, all those staff would be paid for by the PVFD board, and we have a study currently underway that's identified those. I just can't speak to those this evening, but Matt already provided an estimate on the number of lifeguards, which is about 90, and we currently use 65 in our facility now.
Okay. Actually, I mentioned the validation effort that's due next month. Included in that is specifically a staffing plan from a gentleman named Ken Ballard that's the PFD has used for a long time. We'll be sharing that, and it will be important to check in with Jesse and his staff to make sure that with what they think matches what the city would think if it were to take over the process. Okay. And whatever those are, I'm pretty sure the two will match fairly closely.
Personally, I'm certainly in favor of the ask tonight. With that, I was just curious why the third-party option wasn't feasible.
There's a couple reasons. One, if you go back in time where the Kennewick PFD was created, that was, in essence, a little different makeup than the PFD choice in Pasco. Pasco was a caretaker organization to do pass-through of money and receive some back. Kennewick's, I believe, was a case of we need a destination convention center. There was a lot more horsepower, I guess, on the PFD board. And so they looked at whether or not they'd self-perform it. They thought, but they also looked at the hotel motel industry that the convention centers are more related to. There's more availability of third-party management agencies for municipals. There are a couple aquatics facilities, commercial out there, that have management companies. We didn't find nearly the supported model for that. So kind of a little bit of both, if that hopefully answers the question.
Yeah, it does. Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you for that. I think Mr. Grimm was first.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Watkins and Mr. Morset, for coming here tonight. First of all, I want to say Swim City of the Tri-Cities, very clever. Couple play on words there, and I think that fits really well. And just to this point about having the PFD run them all, I just think about just even my own staffing issues and stuff that I know of, and just being able to have lifeguards that can bounce back and forth between, facilities and that kind of stuff. And then just, cutting down upper management, which can be expensive to have one management team kind of run the whole thing. So yes, Mr. Mayor, I would also be open to this idea, but I would like to learn more and have, go through this process a little more. So thank you.
Thank you. With that, I think Mr. Prowse was next.
Thank you, Mayor. So how exactly would the PFD reimburse the city for the staff? Because, it's not based on the sales tax increase, because eventually that goes away. Right. So how is that? Is it based on the revenue generated by the Aquatic Center?
No, it's based on the services. It's actually the same model that's been true since 2002 or revised in 2022 or so. There was the amount that was done was needed essentially a clerk and a part-time staff member prior to 2022. So, after 2022, if I remember right, it was about $5 or $10 grand per month for the agreement, unless needed, more is needed. So we get a bill once a month, and we pay it, so staff, Pasco staff that are needed for PFD services do charge to the PFD already. It's just that this would be an expanded scope, because we're talking about not just using staff as a resource to ask questions. It's been kind of the mode for the past couple of years. This would be to ask Pasco staff to actually run a facility.
Right.
So it'd be a revision of the current process.
So, so then how are we paying for 90 lifeguards then, I guess?
First of all, I think the lifeguards would do a time clock that they at the facility, and that would come from the fund that the city of Pasco manages. That is
okay. So we would.
Yes. Yeah. The books are currently and have always been handled by the city of Pasco for the Pasco Public Facilities District.
So we're paying and then we bill you guys.
Well, we're using the service to keep track of the money. But I might need a little bit of help by Ms. Buckley here. I'm not saying it
You're
probably
doing
as
great.
well as I could.
Currently, what we do is when people throughout the city, whether it's finance or HR, city manager's office, we have a project number that can be used to code your time that's spent for a PFD service, to provide service to the PFD, and then we capture that information and bill the PFD and record the revenue in the appropriate fund or department.
Then how's PFD pay us back then?
We make a journal entry between the two. We charge the PFD fund, and then with an expense for the services we've provided, and then we recognize the revenue on the city's books.
So I think I can provide a little bit clarity on the mechanism. What Darcy explained is the mechanism. Pasco Public Facilities District receives sales tax revenue that currently the city of Pasco receives, but essentially we have two separate books, one for Facilities District and one for city of Pasco. So we would essentially give the board accounting of all of the expenses, what it costs to run the facility, and essentially a dollar amount that they owe us. And then when we get the appropriate approval, then we would transfer that money from essentially their bank account to the city of Pasco's bank account. Does that answer your question?
I guess I'm talking about if we're going to be running it and stuff, how are we paying for those 90 employees? That's what I mean. Long term, the sales tax is just for the construction.
No.
Oh, that's for the actual
Operation.
maintenance as
All
well?
of it.
Yes.
Yeah. But does that go away though?
No.
Oh, so it's for the duration and that it's there?
The sales tax that the voters voted does not have a sunset clause in it. No.
Okay, that was okay.
I would note too that this facility, the model we're looking at, this is getting a little bit more down in the weeds, but none of these make money. So even after you build the big capital expense, operationally we're looking at about a 73% payback on the facility that we're planning, so that it will be supplemented by the sales tax.
Yeah, no, I thought I was under the impression that we were going to have to absorb that into our budget and figure that out, because I figured that sales tax increase would go away after the construction of the facility. But if it's no sunset, then okay,
And in fact, augment that just a little bit more. The PFD's funds are exclusively by the PFD. In fact, we're looking, when we're going through bonding, one of the questions that gets asked is whether or not another jurisdiction might backstop it or kind of co-sign it, so to speak. We're not doing that. The PFD is a standalone entity with its own funding source. It will pay for everything. We would just need to manage that tightly between the two organizations.
Okay. Appreciate it. And then for the name, I think Swim City alone just sounds better, cleaner. So thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Barajas, I believe you're next.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor Watkins, thank you. This is a project that's been a long time coming, 20 plus years. I am looking forward to seeing this come through. The collaboration with the city in partnership with this project is essential. I have seen teams travel to Othello or other places for their swim meets. I have talked to some coaches here at Memorial Pool that wish to have the access at our pools or something better at our pools. So I do look forward to seeing all those teams that are having to travel stay in town and bring in that revenue. Whatever you name it, I know it's going to be in Pasco and it's going to benefit all of Pasco and the Tri-City. So thank you again, Mayor Watkins, for continuing this project.
Thank you, Ms. Barajas. Ms. Blaisdell.
I just wanted to make a comment that I fully support the partnership between the PFD and the City of Pasco. I also got an email from Paul Whitemarsh that I just want to read a little bit about this. The City of Pasco has always had the best opportunities for swimming in the region, and as we see the new state-of-art facility come online, it's going to elevate us to an even higher level of Pasco pride. And I truly believe that this will just make us better than the other two cities.
Thank you. Mr. Milne.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I also want to say that I'm also for the workmen, working together. It's a great idea, and obviously when we can save money, it's a good thing. But I also just want to say I'm really pleased that we've gotten this far. I know I was on the PFD board with Councilman Craig Maloney, and it seemed like you're just talking and talking, and then finally when you get to this point, it's like hallelujah. So thank you for all your work. Thank you for the staff. Again, it seems like it took forever, but now it seems like it's really moving along quickly. So I just want to say thank you, and can't wait to see how this all turns out in 2026. So thank you.
Thank you. And getting property was very important and also longer than any of us wanted to do. We could probably speak a couple chapters about the ramifications, larger picture of that. But getting there, I think a principle that I've heard from various board members is we have one chance to do this right, and we're doing our level best to do it right the first time. And I have a considerate and very involved board of 5 members that are volunteers in the community that get the Pasco and the community spirit. So I'm confident we're going to get the facility. And I just did put up a picture. This is not the latest sketch, but just one more point out is that this is intended to be a 60% year-round facility. That seems to be a little bit of news to some people in the community. They think it's just a regional outdoor seasonal facility. 60% of this is going to be indoors, 40% outdoors and seasonal. So you're going to see some more sketches, and when you see a 3-dimensional sketch, you'll know it's real.
Thank you. Seeing no further lights, my one simple question is the PFD is going to remain the bond holder throughout the entirety. It doesn't transfer at some point.
No.
Okay. With that, I appreciate you. I appreciate your board. I appreciate the public for being involved in this. And, I think to the point that's been made well here is I think it makes sense to have us interact with you and cooperate. To your point on the land, I understand the stumbles or however we want to call that. And I'm not pointing fingers here. I'm grateful that you got the right piece of land, even though it took a little bit longer than you had projected. This is unquestionably a great way to really kick into high gear what's happening in Road 100 and that development. And it can certainly drive, whether it's new businesses or just people who would otherwise not see it in a different part tucked away, It's going to be the pinnacle, especially when you're coming from, say, Yakima or something like that. You're going to see this as you enter the city of Pasco, cross that bridge, and there's the water park, and it's going to be awesome. It's going to be phenomenal for us. So, thank you.
Thank you. And I would just ask, with your obviously favorable, and thank you very much for your favorable perspective, all council members. I think Mr. Rice might have some ideas on how we go to the next step. I don't know if that would be appropriate.
Yeah, so I think staff would look for direction. If there's additional information you'd like to receive, we'd like to know what that is so we can work on that. But ultimately, we'd like to bring a resolution forward with an updated ILA for council to be presented and hopefully approve here in the near future, as it helps Mr. Watkins continue along in his process of bonding and validation and things like that.
Yeah, I'm seeing nods, and I think based on the comments, that'd be appropriate.
Thank you very much.
All right, so I guess I'd ask any information you'd like to receive, if you could forward to City Manager Lincoln, and we can work to collect that. And then collectively, Mr. Watkins and I will work on resolution, and we'll continue to move forward.
Certainly. Thank you to both of you.
Good to see you all.
Thank you. Thanks for coming back and sticking around. With that, we'll move on to item B, which is public space and mobile vending update code for amendments, and that's ordinance CA 2023-005. It's going to be Director Gonzalez.
Good evening, mayors and members of council. Excited to share with you this evening an update on our efforts to update several components of the municipal code related to public space and mobile vending. Tonight, we do have Hope Freehy, urban designer with Framework, who consulted the city both on our downtown Pasco master plan and on this effort to assist with this presentation. So I hope is can hear us right now, and if so, we're ready to start this presentation for council. All right, well then, give me a second. Is the presentation available? Yes.
If not, I have confidence you can do it from memory.
Much appreciated. Okay, Hope, if you're able to log on in the next X amount of minutes, please feel free to chime in. So, all right, council, I'll do my best to give this presentation a quick summary of where we're at. We can go a couple of slides in advance. Next slide, please. A lot of this really came out of the Downtown Pasco Master Plan. We really heard from the public during that effort, a couple of years worth of engagement efforts, along with several years, I think, really of just listening to the members of the public and our business community about increasing opportunities to not only establish as new businesses, but innovative types of businesses, particularly small business and entrepreneurs. And so the idea of what we can do to both incentivize and create opportunities for a lively and authentic downtown, a downtown that can showcase our history, connections to the river, and a place for all ages to live and enjoy was really some of the key points of our downtown, but really that lively and authentic part. Part of that is by allowing and enabling more businesses to establish themselves in downtown. And throughout that effort, it really was something that should be applied citywide, which is why this effort is certainly got a focus in our central Pasco area, but more importantly, citywide. And so on the next slide, this was, it might be hard to see, but some of the strategies that came out of that effort. These are all relevant to this amendment because when we're talking about public spaces, that's the use of both within the right-of-way, outside the right-of-way. So those certainly have a relationship with creating an active and safe streets or public spaces for all, along with the idea of an amendment like this and its opportunity to encourage or increase private development in downtown, but certainly across the city. On the next slide, there's a timeline that shows kind of where we're started. I did get a quick note from Hope that she's logged on now. But with the timeline, the master plan was adopted last January. We wanted to implement this ASAP, considering the community demands and interests along with council direction. And so with this particular effort, there was a council presentation in October of last year, followed by a follow-up in February. And in between February and now, there's been a lot of work done to both refine the code, make sure it has, refine the proposal, make sure it had really accommodated and addressed comments from the public, inches from businesses across the city, particularly our downtown, and then make sure that the code was doing what the intended intent was, which was to increase flexibility, right? We had this pretty lengthy conversation back when this was in front of council in February about the idea of if we propose a code that is too strict, well, that defeats the whole purpose. And so how do we future-proof the code as best we can? And I think sharing that with the public certainly eased maybe some concerns from businesses, but there's still a few remaining questions that our consultant Hope will be able to express with council later on in the presentation. Then here we are tonight. Can we go to the next slide, please? And Hope, if you're on, feel free to.
Yeah.
There you go. Thank you.
Yeah. Can you guys hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, great. Sorry about that. I was waiting for my green light to jump in, but yeah, happy to be presenting to you again. We've done a lot of work since I last saw you, so we're really excited to give you an update. I'm getting some feedback. I wonder if I can just turn down my mic a little bit. Okay, so in February, we presented to council about these public space code amendments. Overall, we were talking about parklets, street cafes, and sidewalk cafes. Sidewalk cafes are already allowed within Pasco. The other two would be new uses of public space that is using a parking spot, either by a restaurant for additional seating, or that is a parklet, which is probably initiated by the city. It's a public space, so that would operate a little bit differently. And then we're looking at mobile vending code to make it less prohibitive, because the current code isn't allowing for mobile vendors to use public space. And again, these overall goals are to encourage more activity downtown by making these programs more accessible and to set clear guidelines so that all of the above is done safely and reflects the goals of the downtown plan, which again do apply citywide, and to create a process that works for the city. Go ahead to the next one. So now getting into what we learned in the various interviews and public engagement events that we did. Can you go ahead? So when we talked to City Council and the Planning Commission, what we heard overall was that there is support for business growth and for removing the barriers that are preventing some of that from happening. There is a desire to limit design restrictions on parklets, streeteries, and sidewalk cafes. There's a desire to limit restrictions on mobile vendors that would threaten the solvency of those businesses. There's a desire to be mindful of the current use of off-street parking spaces and not to create a parking issue downtown or elsewhere. And there's also a desire to create food truck hubs similar to what Kennewick has at Summers Hub. So we interviewed several vendors and people who are involved in mobile vending locally. We also had a few public engagement events at Cinco de Mayo and at Imbibe restaurant downtown on May 14th. We did a parking study and we used a few different methods to look at what the current conditions of parking are downtown to try to estimate what the impact of these public space uses would be. We also coordinated with the fire marshal as well as with the health district, who is involved in regulating mobile vendors. During our interviews, we heard this desire for codes to focus on health and safety, similar to what we heard from council, and to allow for some flexibility rather than a one-size-fits-all approach. We heard that there's a need for partnerships in order to support these businesses, and that the 4-hour time restriction, which was written in the previous draft that we had presented to you, is not long enough to set up a food truck, vend, and then clean up, which also echoes the sentiment that we had heard from council during the February presentation. So we then held an event at Imbibe about or more people, mobile vendors, business owners, people who are passionate about public space attended and overall expressed excitement about these new uses of public space. They echoed what we had heard in previous interviews, which about a desire for flexible code with minimal restrictions that allow for creativity. There's a desire for support with the application and permit process, as well as help with advertising, promotion, and grants. Someone expressed the desire for a map of approved locations to make it easy for mobile vendors to know where they're allowed to be, as well as guidelines or design plans for the design and construction of parklets and cafes. And people also want to see the streets clean and maintained. When asked about their concerns, people responded that they wanted the right balance between flexibility, but with also maybe some design standards. They wonder about impacts on traffic, as well as impact on current businesses. And again, they want to see downtown clean. This slide previously had a video of the drone footage that we got from the police department. I'm moving into talking about the parking study now, but it didn't work with Google PowerPoint, so you're just going to have to imagine it. But parking is something that we often look at in our projects because it comes up a lot during public engagement, and we don't want these new uses of public space to make it harder or less likely for people to visit downtown or other commercial areas of Pasco. So our goal is to find the right balance between using some of these tools, parklets, food trucks, etc., to bring more people into downtown and public spaces where they can support businesses while also balancing the need for parking, as people are more often than not driving to these destinations. So there's a lot of ways we can address parking, and we want to consider those methods, such as parking enforcement or improving the experience of walking downtown. So say if you do have to park a couple blocks away from your destination, it's a pleasant experience. That said, we started our parking study by collaborating with the Pasco Police Department, who flew drones over several blocks of downtown Pasco 3 times a day for 4 days last October. Pasco City staff has also collected additional data that we'll show, and then we looked at Placer.ai to see some general trends. So starting with the data from Placer.ai, this looks at overall visits to downtown Pasco in the last year. And so on the bottom, you see different times of day, and the bars show when there are the most visitors. So the 12 p.m. to 6 p.m. range is the highest. That's when most people are coming downtown, and especially in the 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. range. So then looking at this map shows the analysis of our drone data. This is just one time that we got, and I'll show you the aggregation of that on the next slide. But for this one, this map shows what occupancy looked like on October 19th, a Thursday at 3 p.m. So the red is where there are 80 to 100% of parking spots on that block are occupied. The dark green is where only 0 to 20% of the parking spots are occupied. So just within this snapshot, most of them are 20 to 60% occupied. So you see a lot of yellow, a lot of that lime green. So that's what that range is. And then here shows the summary of the drone data that the police department supplied. So on the bottom, you see the days that they collected data on, which was a Wednesday, Thursday, Tuesday, and Saturday. And then the bar chart shows the different times of day that they collected. Again, it's not a complete picture, but what we see from this is at 9 a.m., you see that mostly it's in the 30% occupancy range, but then that yellow is a Saturday farmer's market. So that makes sense why it was 56% occupied during that time. But in general, we're looking at less than 50% of parking spots occupied given this data that we got from the police department. when we presented the parking data when we met with the public at Imbibe, and we did get a comment that, conditions have changed, especially with the Lewis Street overpass. And so we did want to do our due diligence and collect more data. We don't want to get in a loop where we just want to keep collecting more and more, because in our experience, it ends up usually just showing a similar trend unless things have really, really drastically changed. But Pasco City staff went out and collected data last week and today. So this is hot off the press. And we're looking at a similar, it looks a bit higher than what we showed on the previous slide. Instead of 30 to 40%, it's more 40 to 50. And then, and this is going block by block. So it's a little bit different than the way the data is represented on the previous slide. But so we're looking at various blocks downtown, and we see that it's a little hard for me to see, but on one day we got over 80% on one street. So when I look at this data, the way I interpret it is that if you came to downtown Pasco during this time, there might have been, if you might have not been able to find a spot exactly in front of where you were trying to go, but all streets downtown did have parking spots available. So in addition to looking at what the current parking conditions are, we also want to be realistic about what the impacts of these public space amendments would be. So this map shows the bars, cafes, and restaurants downtown. The reason it shows that is because under the way the code is written right now, to be eligible for a sidewalk or street cafe, you need to have a restaurant, bar, or cafe downtown. You need to have business frontage downtown with one of those uses. And so there's about 8 locations shown on this map. It's possible I missed one, but let's say that all 8 of these restaurants decided that they wanted a cafe, and they didn't want it on the sidewalk for whatever reason. They wanted it in a parking space. Theoretically, under the way the code's written, that could mean that 20 parking spaces would be used for street cafes. And then I'll talk more about this later, but we are proposing a pilot program for mobile vendors. So the other way that a parking space would get used, right, is either a parklet or street cafe, or being occupied by a mobile vendor. So given that we're looking to issue about 10 permits total under this pilot program, depending on what your direction is on it, 5 of those permits would be for downtown. So total, it would be at max 25 parking spaces that would be used for this. There's about, I think it's 353 parking spaces. I wish I wouldn't have closed my Excel sheet, but I did the math earlier, and it was about 4% of parking spaces would be used maximum. And that would be in a perfect world where like many businesses were taking advantage of this new code.
Hey, Hope, this is Mayor Serrano. I do apologize if you don't mind moving along at a little bit of a faster clip. I suspect at some point we're really going to want to look at what the code implicates.
Yes.
Thank you.
Let's do it. Okay, so one of the main things we did for this round, since we spoke to you in February, is that we added food truck parks as a use. That's something that we heard that you wanted. So we added that as an allowed use and created pretty simple design guidelines for that. We simplified the different cafe types into simply public space cafes, and they have guidelines for them. We removed the restrictions, the time restrictions on mobile vendors, and instead, with a permit, you can vend for an amount of time specified on your permit, but that wouldn't be restricted to 4 hours or a time period like that. We removed zoning restrictions on public space cafes. They're allowed where there's a restaurant, so it doesn't matter what zone you're in. And overall, the code errs on the side of flexibility. Okay, so now we're going to talk about mobile vending. The main issue with mobile vending is where and for how long, and then looking at the permit process and aiming to make that easy for people, essentially. So of course we're writing code for Pasco, but the state and the district laws matter. Within the state, you need to have access to bathrooms with proper hand washing facilities within 500 feet of your food truck at all times if you're vending for more than an hour in a location. So that is a restriction that we're considering when we're writing this code. We're also considering the fact that within the health district, you are required to submit a location agreement form. Again, it's because they need to know that mobile vendors are able to provide hand washing facilities to their employees and themselves. And then route vendors, route vendors are those who move more often. That's maybe an ice cream truck that doesn't have to set up and cook and do all of that. They are required to delineate their typical route for the health district. So right now, as the way that Pasco's code is written, vendors can only vend 1 hour within any 4-hour period in a location. And it restricts vendors from stationing near schools and other businesses. So under this new code, route vendors can still use the public right-of-way in the same way. So an ice cream truck can still pull up to the side of the road, vend and move on. That doesn't change. Vendors can also continue to occupy public and private properties with an owner agreement. So that hasn't changed. It's required by the health district that they have an owner agreement. One restriction that we did remove was that there needs to be a business operating on site. So that would exclude someone from vending on a vacant lot. So that is that is a change. A vendor could now operate on a vacant lot as long as they had permission from the person who owned that lot. And we are now aiming to make it so that people can vend in public space, in the right of way, in a parking space for longer periods of time. That would be specified, the location that they'd be vending in would be specified on their permit. So if you're someone who wanted to station somewhere for longer, you're someone who's cooking food, you want your customers to know where you're going to be, you want to have a regular spot that you're occupying, you can do that with a permit. So kind of the same thing I just said, but looking at it in a different way. Now vendors are able to be on private and public lots, including vacant lots. They are able to be in food truck parks. They're able to be in the right of way and parks where permitted. They're allowed to be in the right of way as route vendors for shorter periods of time. We have removed restrictions that prohibit vendors from being within 400 feet of schools. We didn't find precedent for that as a health and safety need. We've also removed the restriction that vendors can't be within 300 feet of a business that sells food or any other business. And we've removed the time restrictions. The length of time would be defined on their permit. Route vendors have to move every 2 hours. We're basically giving them a 1-hour grace period, but under state law, they do have to move with that frequency. So looking at food truck parks, we specified that food truck parks don't count as temporary businesses. That was something that was preventing food truck parks from existing, basically, because in the overlay district code, it says that they have to be, that temporary businesses have to be 300 feet apart. Temporary businesses are defined under state law as businesses that only operate for around 90 days a year or something like that. So it shouldn't apply to food trucks, but it could be interpreted that way. So we removed that restriction because obviously being 300 feet away from the nearest food truck prevents you from having a food truck park. So we added that as a use, and we created design standards that are based off of Kennewick, but a little bit simpler. So we're looking for guidance from council. As I've said, we are wanting to make it possible for mobile vendors to occupy public space for longer periods of time. We believe that should be specified on their permit. That gives vendors regularity, and that allows them to know where they're going to be, and for their customers to know where they're going to be. We've talked to several vendors about this, and our question is whether the city should create a map of pre-approved locations so that a vendor could easily, if they're wanting to apply for a permit, they could look at this map and see this spot is available. I'd like to get a permit for that spot. Or if we would instead come up with kind of guidelines for the city to know when do I approve a vendor, when do I not. So things like when we talked to businesses, they said they don't necessarily want a vendor right outside their window. Like they understand the benefit of having mobile vendors downtown, but they don't necessarily want to see it right outside their restaurant. So we would, work with city staff to know what those guidelines are to approve permits for locations that would make sense for downtown, that would minimize any disagreements while also giving mobile vendors many places to choose from and really kind of high profile locations. The second question is, which zoning districts, if any, do you not want to see food truck parks in? Do you want to allow food truck parks in residential zones, or no? Are kind of our main question. So we can pause and get feedback here, or if you want me to just keep running through, we can wait and have questions at the end.
I think go ahead and just try and run through, and if possible, keep it as brief as possible.
Okay. Okay, so now going to public space cafes. We are looking to limit design standards to those that deal with health and safety, and to have a process where if someone isn't approved for their permit right away, the city can work with them to figure out a design solution, figure out the right site for their cafe. We removed zoning restrictions because it's not relevant, given that if you are associated with a bar, restaurant, or cafe, you're probably in a zone that will work for this use. We added a restriction that you can't have these on freight routes just because of the volume of trucks that pass through for a safety concern. And so just to summarize, cafes used to be allowed on sidewalks. Now we're saying they're allowed on sidewalks, parking spaces, sidewalks as well as parking spaces. And rather than having it just be within one zone, it's not restricted by zone, because again, these are associated with restaurants, which would only be in certain zones. Next steps for this part of the code would be to design a cafe marker. So this would delineate the extent of the cafe and be part of also a marketing effort, kind of a branding effort for downtown, show that it's a space that is vibrant and cared for. There's a possibility of creating pre-approved plans for structures, which would be an additional effort, but could help if someone wanted to build a structure, but didn't have the resources to design it themselves. And then next slide, just looking at implementation. Just have one slide on this, which is that we're proposing a pilot program, which would be 1 year. We would issue 10 permits for right-of-way public space funding. We would work with businesses to support them through this process. We would log feedback that we receive over the course of the year, and then we would report back and decide if we want to issue more permits, create more restrictions, or address any other issues that have come up. And that's all I got.
Thank you, Hope. Thank you, Jacob. I know there was a lot to get through, and I apologize for rushing. But
No
Mr.
worries.
Grimm?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No, I appreciate that. And, some of the questions that came up, I wouldn't be a big fan of tents or canopies in the right of ways. We saw that coming through. But as far as mobile food trucks or even carts, would be okay with. The one concern I would have, though, that was brought up was within 300 feet of a existing business that sells food also. I mean, I think of somebody bringing a churro cart up in front of Vieira's and starting to sell those. I mean, or, other instances, maybe that's not the best, business plan in all reality. But at the same point, I could see our existing multi-generational family businesses kind of potentially taking this as a slap in the face that suddenly we allow, just this mobile food truck right in front of their businesses. They've endured COVID and economic downturns and other issues. So that would be the one part of this. I mean, I love the direction we're going. I appreciate the thorough presentation. I think this is a huge step in the right direction as far as lifting restrictions, but that's my one trepidation in this, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Grimm. Mr. Prowse?
Thank you, Mayor, and I'll be brief. Very good presentation. Appreciate all the hard work from Mr. Gonzalez. Just a couple of questions. A lot of my questions got answered during the presentation. Are we going to have a chance to look at the pre-selected areas for those 10 right-of-way permit locations?
I think that was one of the... Go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead, Jacob.
You can take this one, Hope.
Okay, so the question we were posing, so is whether we want to create a list of those approved locations ahead of time, you know, so that would be an effort on the part of the city. Of course, there'd be a map it would be based on specifications. Like we wouldn't approve any permits that were right in front of another restaurant. You know, we'd have a list of criteria and then we'd create this map. Or if we want to do it instead based on where these vendors actually request locations. So it's a question we have. Do we want to create a set map of these locations, or do we want to do it based on the requests of mobile vendors as they come in?
I like that criteria. Okay. That sounds like we're on the same page with that one. One of my concerns I have, like one of those pictures, they were showing like some people outside, like a street cafe type of thing, or sidewalk cafe. Didn't seem like there was a lot of access in that picture, right? That was probably a bad example. I just want to make sure that we have enough ADA access if we were to do that. And so that was a concern for me looking at some of our sidewalks. What is our plan with that?
Yeah, so we looked at a few options. What we ended up doing was requiring that 3 feet of space is left anywhere you are bending on the sidewalk or having a public space cafe that aligns with ADA restrictions. We looked at maybe requiring more, maybe requiring people to leave 6 feet, but we wanted to be flexible and for people to have to be able to implement these. I mean, sidewalks downtown are pretty large, so I don't see it being as much of an issue, but at the very least, to comply with ADA, we are requiring 3 feet.
Okay, thank you. And then the last question I had was, it's very, very specific, but you know, a lot of us on the council, I've seen posts from Hot Tamales and stuff, and so I want to get specific about the location. So I mean, the way I read it was, in this case, a business could be at that vacant lot right there on Vernon because there's not a permanent business there. Is that my correct interpretation of the code? That's going to be the way it's going to be written if we pass this?
The code itself right now does not require there to be a brick and mortar business on site. So that is correct.
Currently, or the way it's written that we're proposing?
My apologies. The way we're proposing.
Correct. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Prowse. Ms. Blaisdell.
No, I do have a question. It just slipped my mind and came back. Jacob, out of curiosity, how many vendors do you think have requested locations that you've had to turn away?
Well, one for sure. I don't have a full list, but that's certainly something that we can take a look at and bring back to council via email if that's something you'd like to see.
I'm just curious, of the 10, do you have like 10 businesses that are waiting for this to pass?
I don't have a specific number. I would venture to say that, though, there's several businesses who have been turned down at the permit counter in the past, and that with a proposal like this moving forward, that there would be a little bit more yes than no.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Blaisdell. Mr. Milne.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I appreciate the report. It's kind of basically includes all the comments that we've talked about as far as on a council level or past council levels in the last couple of years. So thank you for getting this done. I did say that I would not be for having food trucks in residential areas. To me, that would be very disadvantageous to a lot of people. So definitely against that, but everything else, I think it's definitely a big step in the right direction. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Milne. Mr. Harpster.
Thanks. Yeah, like everybody else, in favor of allowing this only in commercial areas and not residential. Not at all interested in, I'm trying my notes, allowing tent vendors, 100% no on that. And then two of the questions posed were map of pre-approved vending locations. I think yes, that would make it easy on folks wanting to do that. And then lastly, if it'd be helpful, just a note for staff to have the consultant here in person doing their presentation, because I'm already hard of hearing, and then we didn't even get a copy of this presentation, so I can't follow along at all. So I caught 20% maybe of what was discussed, and like I said, I can't follow along here. We got 80 pages of proposed code amendments that got the legal review needed stamp on it. So if we could get a copy of that presentation, that'd be helpful. Thanks.
Seeing no further lights, staff, do you need any particular direction? I mean, it sounds like we have a couple of issues that need to be worked out throughout this process.
Yeah, one is we'll get the presentation to you shortly, and then two, it sounds like we got the direction with respect to the questions we had asked and inquired about. So I think we'll be ready to prepare a final ordinance for review with a recommendation at the next available meeting.
Oh, sorry. Excellent. With that, I think we'll move on to the next item. Seeing no further lights, Hope, thank you for your time, and appreciate
Thank
you
you.
trying to speed along as we helped. There's a lot of information, and we appreciate greatly the work you put into it and your team.
Great. Yeah, thanks for listening.
Yeah, absolutely. So with that, we're moving on to item number C, or item letter C, which is introduction of limited tax general obligation bond ordinance, and this is Director Buckley.
Good evening, Mayor and Council members. Tonight, I'm going to quickly go over the tax increment financing. I know you all are aware of the Broadmoor area being a tax increment financing area. The state of Washington approved the availability of a TIF, I'm going to call it TIF from now on, as an option for public funding of capital projects in 2021. And as you can see on the screen, we have a model or a picture that shows how tax increment financing is supposed to work, or does work, I should say. There is an existing tax base, the kind of peach color, that exists before the creation of the TIF area, and then as the assessed value grows in the TIF area and more taxes are collected, that incremental value is used to pay for those public investments, and it does not represent a new tax or added tax in that area to property owners. An important factor of TIF area evaluation and designation is that we want to make sure that the cost of improvements can be covered or reasonably be covered. It's not a guarantee, but we can look at the cost of improvements that the TIF debt will pay for, and that there's potential growth in assessed value in that area to cover those costs. Part of that reason is that TIF debt issuance is backed by the credit and full resources of the city, and so the goal is that the TIF area will produce revenue to pay for those improvements and avoid relying on existing city revenues prior to TIF designation to pay for the debt over the time of the debt payback, which is about 25 years. So we can go to the next slide, please. I think, covered most of the items here. Yes, please go to the next. So where we are now is we've taken various steps, and it includes we've established, or the city established, a TIF area. Council approved the Broadmoor TIF area in 2022. Part of that requirement, or the steps, were a project analysis and review is completed, and including financial feasibility, and a report provided to the Office of the State Treasurer. The Office of the State Treasurer looked at all that analysis and data and has an opportunity to make suggestions or return comments, and there was none returned. Next slide, please. There's been milestones along this path, of course. In 2021, the RCW was approved, and 2022, Council adopted an ordinance to create the TIF. As you know, in 2023, the interchange project started and recently opened. And in 2024, we've entered a public-private partnership, and the purpose of talking to you tonight is we are preparing to issue a limited tax general obligation bond to get debt proceeds to complete further public city public infrastructure creation or construction. Excuse me. Next slide, please. And at this point, I'm going to hand the presentation off to Deputy City Manager Sigdell.
Thank you. And the map that you see in front of you on the screen is essentially the green part is where the city is going to invest 100% of the project costs, and we have projections on when we believe that the revenues from the increase in development activity in the area will be able to be enough to pay for those debt service. And the red part is where we're doing our public-private partnership, really public-private partnership. We are partnering with PPFD and as well as Broadmoor Properties. And given that they both have interest in building that road in red, which is essentially an extension of Santa Fe Parkway and an extension of Road 108, as Director Sarah mentioned earlier in the PBS contract that you voted to extend and amend. They essentially have interest in building that road, and hence they're partnering on that 100% without the city's contributions. And but the city will be taking the lead on building those projects, and we're really looking forward to all of the interest in and development that project itself as a water park, as well as the fact that all of the infrastructures are already in there, will spur for the city and the Broadmoor area.
Let me go. Thank you. So here you can see a list of the bond projects. So we'll issue the debt, and that's anticipated to happen around the end of July with your approval of the ordinance. And on the list is the project description, cost estimate, and then the associated debt service that would be required on an annual basis to pay the bondholders back. And I think there's one more maybe. Oh, nope. So at this point, if you have questions, we're available to answer them. And the next step, I guess I should add, is coming back at the next council meeting to request your approval of the ordinance. And then subsequently, we will work on issuing the debt.
Thank you. It looks like tonight's theme is Broadmoor, in addition to expanding opportunities throughout the city with our various mobile vendors. Any comments or questions from council? See, Mr. Prowse.
I'll be really quick, Mayor. The only question I have is, so essentially, we're doing this public-private partnership to start building the road now, as opposed to waiting for revenue to come in, for those property tax revenue?
Yes,
Okay.
tax income and financing is always you spend it now and you kind of hope that there's going to be a return on investment, and that's why we do a lot of projections and analysis to make sure that that period is not a very long time, because we do have to pay for the debt service as you build that the infrastructure. And that is where being able to find partners that are going to carry the load of 40%, up to 40% of the debt service will be really helpful for us. It'll help our cash flow. We don't have to come up with 100% of the debt service, so that 2.7 million that you see, the city will be paying about 60% of that. And as development happens, that burden kind of goes away from everybody, all of our partners, including us.
Okay, appreciate it. I think it's this is related, but I wanted to see if we could get a summary list of our current debts and what our debt service is for those items, just for our knowledge. I'd appreciate that.
All right. I'm guessing. All right. Anything else from council? Seeing none, I realize that on the first two items, I forgot to offer public comment. Again, under this type of meeting, our opportunity is 2 minutes per side, up to 4 minutes, or for an aggregate of 8 minutes. I guess, does anyone have a comment on either items A, B, or C? Seeing none, we'll move on to item number D. Oh.
Yeah, I did.
And if you'll state your name and city of residence. Thanks.
David Witt, Pasco. My question is on the zoning for the food trucks and the mobile vending. Is that going to be I guess is that going to be 300 foot for those properties that are coming out for mobile vendors for the zoning? Because they were talking about coming up with zoning for, what would the zoning be for those? I don't know.
It's a question.
Is that okay? Just say ask.
Yeah. So typically we don't offer this opportunity to ask a question. That said, if staff's got it at the fingertips, if not, I think we can coordinate an answer to you, Mr. Witt.
Yeah, I can meet with you following the meeting and talk with you about it.
I'd love that. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for the question. If no other questions exist, I'm sure there are plenty swirling, but thank you for holding them. We'll move on to item number D, capital improvement plan, and this is going to be Deputy Director Sigdell, right?
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Council. This is an introduction to our capital improvement plan. As Council has just looked at our transportation plan, this is essentially the rest, all of the capital projects for the city. And so what we want to make sure is that we have a very comprehensive list that accounts for all of the city needs. As a former finance director, I like to say just because we need it doesn't mean we can build it. So we have to have good financial planning to make sure that we accomplish our most critical projects. Capital improvement plan is a plan. It's not a budget. Usually budgets are approved by council during that budget action. So it does not provide staff with an authority to spend the money because it's just a plan. However, this plan is really critical. It allows us to think about things like rate studies of what are all of the capital needs that a utility might require, and then be able to include that in a rate study so we're not coming to you with large increases sometimes because we're not looking far out in the horizon. And so it's a very important tool, but it's not a budget. We come to a couple of next slides, please. We come to one more, maybe more, of how we develop the CIP and community input, the goal setting for council. We hear it from some of our developers, our external partners, sometimes like Pasco School District, with whom we're partnering on a few things. What are their needs? What are they wanting to build? Sometimes there are transportation projects that might not have been anticipated or maybe far out, but because of development patterns, we might have to push them up. So there's a lot of factors, master plans, and then of course council's needs and desires, and whether there's funding available. So these are the main factors that shape our capital improvement plan. And our goal with each plan is to make sure that there is enough funding, especially in the first couple of years, to complete those projects. So we don't want to put things in our budget that are either not deliverable or that we do not have funding identified for it. There are some cases where it's valuable to do so, so we will do that as an exception rather than a rule. And some of those reasons are essentially that if we say we're in a dire need for something, it better be a priority and listed in our capital improvement plan, listed in our budget. And so we will include some projects where even if there is unidentified or unsecured funding, that we have included that in our plan. So what you'll be seeing is in the next couple of months, first a draft list of all of our projects, and then staff going out to the community and doing outreach on what they would like to see, very much following what we did with the TIP, and then coming back to council with any changes, also incorporating your feedback and the community's feedback into it, and being able to get to like a 99% of what our capital biennium budget would look like, and then come back during the budget time and relook at the capital funding with an additional focus on funding and its availability.
Thank you for that presentation. Do we have any questions or comments here? Mr. Grimm?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just really briefly, Deputy City Manager Sigdell, thank you for your presentation. Also, thank you for your work on the last agenda item. It sounds like your work was pivotal on getting the road put through and everything. So really appreciate that. And no, I just want to thank staff just in general for, I know this came up in an agenda item very late last year, early next year. And I appreciate staff holding off on this till they learn more about the new council and our priorities than to really just kind of put this together and represent it. So thank you very much. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Seeing no additional comments, I'll simply note, I mean, this is important. I appreciate, especially as you look through some of the slides, it lays out our structure on how we intend to get this out through social media, trying to engage as much as in the community. I know some folks think we could do more, and certainly there's always the notion that we could do more, but don't forget, the more we do, that's your taxpayer dollars at work. And so we do our best to inform and advise within as strict of a budget as possible. So thank you for that presentation and look forward to coming back down the road. Do we have any questions or comments on this item? Okay, seeing none, we're going to move along to item E. That's E as an echo. And that's resolution I-182 on Broadmoor Boulevard Interchange Project, change order number 6. And this is going to come from Director Sarah.
Good evening, Mayor and Council members. We actually have online our construction management project manager from Atlas, and also our senior engineer is in the audience in case there are any questions to be answered.
You have the slides up?
Yes, they're up.
There we go. Mayor, Council, thank you for the time tonight. As if you've driven by the Broadmoor project, you can see it's coming along quite well. And we're here today to talk about change order number 6 for the project. If you look to the next slide, there's a picture after the loop ramp was recently completed. As you may know, it's open. We've had the next slide, we've had a couple previous change orders on this project that those are listed out. Some of those were executed at staff authority, and then one of those previously required council authority. And the next slide, and we'll kind of sum up what is on there. This change order is for those items listed out. I will give a brief summary of each one. The electrical service modifications. Originally, the power for all of the new pedestrian signal and luminaires were intended to be split between WashDOT and the city of Pasco. Once the project had already bid, some of there was a change in right-of-way, and WashDOT, there was an agreement where they took on more right-of-way, which puts all of the equipment in their right-of-way. And so this modification is that first piece is to switch all of the power supply to come from them. It'll end up with a long-term cost savings to the city of not having to pay power service, as well as if there's other maintenance or damage that needed to occur to it from a traffic crash. The second item on there is some additional drainage structures. Once it got into construction, the Washington DOT decided that they wanted some additional storm drain structures and eliminate some of the sheet flow across the shoulder into the drainage area. And so that this includes that redesign, the additional costs for those drainage structures. The third item there, the depth of the luminaire foundations, and because of how they were originally designed, and then there was some additional filtration material, biosoil in there. They needed some adjustments that was identified during construction to get more depth and allow to provide the structural stability of that. The grade adjustments between the digital files or the model, which is how most design or most construction is built nowadays with automated grade control on equipment. Between the model and the design, there was some discrepancies. The contractor laid it out based on the model. During inspection, we identified that, and so they had to change some of where the new pavement is, the price on for the ramp. And then the fifth item is some additional signage on the loop ramp. The chevron arrows were not included on the design, and so this is adding them. That's all I've got. Any questions?
Thank you for that presentation. Any questions or comments from council? Mr. Grimm?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No, I just think it's important for the public to know that a lot of these changes were from the Washington State Department of Transportation. I read through all this before the meeting, and some of them you could almost call unfunded mandates from the state. And so, you know, I know everybody likes to look at change orders, as we should, with a fine-tooth comb, but a lot of this just stems from what the Department of Transportation said they want us to do. So anyways, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you for that, Mr. Grimm. Mr. Prowse?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I guess my biggest bone to pick would be, I mean, can we not push back on the state when it comes to some of this stuff and push it back on them? Because, I mean, it's coming out of our pocket.
I'll take that answer. So the reality of it is that this is their facility, and therefore we are subject to their requirements. The city saw the need, identified the need, and requested to be able to build a project to better serve the community and the growth that we are to experience and alleviate the congestion and safety concerns we had. But this is their structure to keep and maintain onward. Therefore, we don't get to choose how we build it.
Okay, and then my other, I think we should push back from time to time, but that's fine. My other question would be in regards to the digital files and the modeling and stuff and the issues with the grading. Do we have a contingency when it comes to the design stuff where we pull back money and when stuff like this happens? Because it seems like this is an issue between the design and then the model between the contractor. So do we ever do that in case things like this happen? And I mean, essentially we're paying the contractor for the work. We're not paying for the redesign, are we?
No, we're not paying to redesign, and yes, the project budget has contingency in it to accommodate these changes or slight modifications to whatever we had in the design.
Okay. And then lastly, I think the way I saw it worded was that the chevron signage was missing. Have we gone over like the whole project to see if there's anything else missing, and we just get a lot of this stuff signed off during like one change order as opposed to change order, change order, change order?
I can answer that, Mr. Mayor and Councilman Perales. So there are a couple other outstanding items in there that we've identified. Some of these are ones during construction that they come up. Some of the additional ones, and part of it is we'll probably come back at a later date with some additional items. Some of it has to do with, and this is not just a local to Pasco or Washington DOT. This happens in lots of places. When you've got municipal contracts, so the city of Pasco has a contract, and then it also references in Washington DOT standards. Sometimes there are things that get crossed over a little bit. And anyway, so yes, we have been evaluating that, and I'm working with city staff to bring those forward at a later date.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions or comments from council? I'm with you all here. It'd be nice if we could identify all potential change orders, but I realize that's not always, the crystal ball only goes so far in design and construction, I understand. Maybe it's the pavement you have to chip through or replace, but unfortunately it's not the case. But certainly we appreciate you bringing this to us as soon as possible, and hopefully we'll be limited in scope of future change orders. Do we have any public comment on this? Seeing none, I'm going to move on to item F. That is ordinance amending Pasco Municipal Code. Section 3.35.160, water utility to include a 10-inch line rate. And this is going to go to Deputy Director Sigdell, or Deputy City Manager Sigdell, I apologize.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. This is a very quick one. We're essentially requesting that we add a fee for 10-inch lines. We've not included that in the past. We've already done in the past a rate study that kind of encompasses different pipe sizes and what we should be charging, so we can easily do an extrapolation. And we are looking at much larger industrial users than maybe we have in the past, and we're needing to revise our PMC to ensure that we have a rate that we can charge them for the pipes that we're connecting to.
Do we have any questions or comments on this one? And just, Ms. Sigdell, it sounds like you basically use the volume of water that would come out on 8 and then multiply it by 1 1/4 or something like that.
Exactly, yes.
Okay. Seems, even lawyer math seems to compute there. So with that, do we have any public comments on this? Hopefully no one's asking for a 12 or a 16. With that, we'll move on to item G, which is Connecting Housing to Infrastructure Program, or CHIP. And this is going to come from Director Gonzalez.
Good evening, Mayor and members of Council. In 2021, the Department of Commerce established a program to assist and offset the costs related to infrastructure improvements, offsite improvements, etc., with housing projects, essentially connecting housing to infrastructure, or CHIP. The CHIP reimburses local governments and public utilities for utility connections. There are certain requirements in order to apply for the program. It's an annual program, a city, county, or public utility. And with respect to the housing itself, must be deemed affordable for at least 25 years or more. On the next slide, in 2023-2025 biennium, there was roughly $55 million available from the state to apply for funding. In this go-around, roughly $46 million was awarded. The city of Pasco, along with the initiation of a private developer, submitted an application in late 2023, and we were awarded $2 million. I believe it's the first time a award was allotted for Franklin County. The project was for Jubilee Foundation, the construction of Terra Vita Phase 3, roughly 120 units. And between the region of Pasco, Kennewick, and Walla Walla, about $4.2 million was awarded. Next slide is just some elevations illustrating the housing development that was awarded the $2 million. And then, let's see, one more slide, please. No, one more. In order to proceed with this effort, council and the city does need to adopt an ordinance that specifies the specific fees to be waived and to be reimbursed by the Department of Commerce. The city of Pasco essentially is a facilitator. We're the middle person in this agreement between the Commerce Department and the private developer and or applicant. So I just wanted to provide council with a high-level overview of this item, and that we will be bring back the ordinance for your review and recommendation in the coming weeks, and then move forward with the project. So happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Gonzalez. Do we have any questions or comments? Mr. Browse.
I'll be quick, Mayor. I like that this program is happening and that we have an applicant utilizing it. I guess my only ask and comment would be if there's a way for us to expand this where we can do this in-house. I mean, obviously there's a pass-through of money, but I mean, other areas in the state do connection waivers if, you know, developers are putting in so much, a certain amount of units with affordable housing. I think that's something we should explore. You know, we can figure out how we would cover those costs, but I'm sure there's a way if a developer is willing to put in so many, like a certain percentage of affordable housing in relation to the median income of our area. So I just wanted to put that out there because I think we're just doing this because of this pass through of money, and it's not essentially. I mean, until we get more money, I mean, this wouldn't be applied anymore. Would that be correct? Through this grant?
It's state funding enacted by the legislature.
Right. So it's not like it's coming out. I mean, it's coming out of our tax coffers, but it's not. You know, again, it's just we're just the pass through, essentially. Correct.
Yeah, we're simply a facilitator of this effort.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Perales and Mr. Gonzalez. Do we have any other questions or comments from council? Seeing none, do we have any questions? Yes. Ms. Franczyk, welcome.
It was very exciting to read this council packet because you're doing such great things. My question is actually for Mr. Gonzalez, but I'll address it to you. Is this program for the CHIP housing, does it have to be a housing development, or can you use it for backfilling empty properties throughout the city? Can you have these low-income housing units be put throughout the community rather than lumped together?
That's a great question. Hopefully staff, I see a nod. Go ahead, Mr. Gonzalez.
Yes, it can. There's several eligibility requirements, but essentially, yes.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Any other question, Mr. Bramble? Or was that just a, sorry, I saw a hand up, or someone's alive. With any other comments here? With none, we'll move on to item H, which is resolution project acceptance for GESA stadium improvements. And this is coming from Director Sarah.
Good evening, Mayor and Council members. We are presenting to you for acceptance the work of the contractor, Apollo Inc., in the first phase of improvements to GESA Stadium. The project was awarded to the contractor last summer, and the work was completed within the timeline established, which was prior to beginning of season this year. So that was in the spring. And the majority of the work, and we'll advance the slides real quick. You're seeing the before and then the during and the after. Most of the improvements had to do with modifications within the facility, mainly where the lockers and lunchroom and other areas, bathrooms and so on, where the teams prepare for the game and then reconvene after the games. And unless you have questions, that's it for this presentation.
I see no lights. Looks like there are no comments. I'd certainly say this. I had the opportunity to attend a game, and Mr. Miles, one of the owners of the team, actually walked me through the facilities. And you know, there's certainly for high A minor league ball, you know, they're certainly nice. These guys have their own spaces, their own not just lockers, but ability to lock stuff up. You know, if they're bringing their wallets, their iPods, or whatever they've got. So yeah, I know I'm not super tech savvy. I'm sorry about that. Yeah. I guess the iPods don't exist. Great. Now I'm dating myself. Yeah, we're thrown back to 2012. Anyway, it's nice to see that they've got facilities. Mr. Rice, thanks for bailing me out.
No problem.
Director of Funding.
I'd also like to extend an invitation to any other council members that'd like to take a tour of that facility. The owners have offered a tour in one of the evenings they do not have a game, so you can see all the updates. So just let me know and we can get that scheduled.
Thank you. Do we have any questions or comments from our attendees here? Anyone listen to iPods out there, right? Okay, well, with that, we will move on. I got a note it's going to be item number 6, miscellaneous council discussion. I see from Mr. Lincoln, none from staff. Do we have Ms. Blaisdell?
I do want to give props to our firefighters with the city of Pasco and the surrounding districts for getting Tri-City Palace under control in a timely manner. I know that one was not easy, so thank you, I appreciate it, fighting the wind. And also I'd like to give a shout out to Pasco Police Department for working very hard, keeping downtown, getting it cleaned up. I drove through there this morning and I was quite impressed. I didn't see anyone laying on any sidewalks, so thank you for your continuous effort on that.
Thank you. I don't know how the order went here because I don't have the iPad. things not up. So I'm just going to go to the left and then circle back. So we'll go Mr. Perales and then Mr. Grimm will go.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to talk with or bring it to the attention of the council in regards to the legislative interim action plan. There are just a couple items on there that I feel like maybe we should discuss, have like a small workshop and just discuss those. So that we're all on the same page. So then when we're directing our lobbyists here in this next session, that they're doing things that we've kind of formed a consensus on. So that's all I wanted to bring. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't know if we have consensus right now, but certainly, I guess if we don't have that immediately, let's go ahead and ping Mr. Lincoln if we've got folks that are interested in an additional workshop meeting like this, like not like the one we had a couple hours ago. Mr. Grimm.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I want to concur with Councilwoman Blaisdell. I was out at the BDI transfer station and when we saw the fire, and actually beat the first and the second responders there this morning. And yeah, that was quite a fire. And so I'm sorry for the loss of property, of course, there. I'm grateful that there were no lives or injuries I saw affected and everything. But yeah, thanks you guys. And yeah, and I know some of these meetings are going to get a little long, but we have requested a big lift of staff. And just like the Blue Bridge is going to make for a long summer for travelers, I think we're going to have a long season ahead of us. But Mr. Mayor, in light of all the recent public testimony and emails we've received in regard to the Tri-Cities Animal Shelter, I requested a meeting with staff this last week, and I appreciate their willingness to fulfill my request. First of all, I'm very thankful for the many volunteers that give their time, treasure, resources, and hearts into the shelter. Our volunteers are very appreciated, and without their tireless work, the quality of life of these animals would be greatly diminished. I know staff is working on updating the volunteer program that includes animal handling, a code of conduct, implementation of an electronic volunteer management system, etc. I think this will help a lot in alleviating some of the conflicts that have occurred. Although great strides have been made by the city since taking over the shelter, it seems that we as a body could support the effort by passing some much needed protocols and procedures. For example, I was surprised that there isn't a limit on the length of stay or dollars that can be spent on medical procedures for each animal. The most extreme of those cases is an animal had $25,000 spent on it last year, and it's not unheard of for the length of stay to be 300 days. We are an animal-loving household. As much as we love them, I believe when there's an onset of injury or illness to any family pet, an assessment must be made of the viability and cost of the procedure. I have a 104-pound German Shepherd that sticks to me like glue. He has canine lupus and has to have daily medication for the rest of his life. We have made a decision as a family to continue to care for him, but as a steward of our taxpayers' money, I can't in good conscience allow an unlimited dollar amount to be spent on any animal that comes to the shelter. We make these same cost assessments for human life. Overpasses save human lives, but we don't have them all the way up to Ritzville on the 395. Although some are definitely needed, we don't have enough money, just like we don't have enough money to put a stoplight at every intersection, although they save lives. Mr. Mayor, many of the conflicts we have at the shelter are over the proper care and handling of animals. I know last week we didn't have enough head nods for an advisory committee, but it's my intention tonight, preferably by head nods, but by a motion if needed, to direct staff to investigate what other comparable shelters do in regards to dollar amount per animal, length of stay, and any other pertinent policies and procedures that we could adopt to help facilitate our animal shelter and bring them back to us in a workshop later this summer for us to consider. Thank you.
Okay. The request has been made. I guess we can either void a formal motion if we've got enough head nods. I see 3.
Sure.
Yes. Okay. So, staff, is it clear? Mr., do you want a real formal motion and a voice vote?
Well, a couple things. One, I'm not sure what staff is being asked to do, and we do have to be really careful because we got a couple of things going on here. We got the one aspect of this we talked a little bit about during the rules session, where we do have to be careful because some of these things are related to operations and are clearly executive branch functions, and so we have to be careful there with regard to what not just this council, which leads to the second issue, which is not just this council but the other 2 councils would be able to be involved in. And I'm certainly open to getting that information and coming back and doing a report. It's currently on my list to come back to you guys and give you a general overview of the ACA. Because there's multiple different ILAs. I think the last count was 5 different ILAs, depending on how you look at it. My thought process was that I would come back, give you a general overview of kind of what the governance structure is, and then I think what that will show, and we can highlight in those ILAs, is what the city managers and their designees for each of the 3 cities have delegated to the ACA board. And then at that point, I think that would really kind of help you define what exactly maybe you're looking for in terms of what's missing and what, the problem, and then locating the solution. But that'd be my preference, is to be able to come back to you and get you some general overview of the legal governance structure of this. But obviously, you can do what you like.
So I think what I'm hearing from Mr. Grimm is separate and distinct. What you're talking about is the legal avenues of the animal care and the ILA, but what I think he's asking for is more of operational costs.
And that is specifically delineated in the ILAs. That's why I was getting back to that, is because all those things that were brought up in Mr. Grimm's comments there are specifically addressed in the ILAs in different ways. So I think it may answer a lot of the questions. It also may sharpen the questions that you may have. But obviously, process is up to the council.
Okay. Do you intend to address the cost comparison tool? I mean, obviously, he's not looking for a specific tool, but I think one thing that I did hear, which sounds like it may be out of the wheelhouse, is whether or not other similarly situated organizations, like if they've got caps and that sort of thing, would you or staff collectively be able to incorporate that into your conversation?
Yeah, I think Mr. Rice and I, we've discussed a little about kind of what that looks like in the cities, because they, again, all 3 cities have different animal control codes. So that's why we're responsible for kind of making sure all those come together. But that issue is something we can certainly make sure that's incorporated in part of that. But yeah, don't want to.
I'm seeing a head nod from Mr. Grimm. It sounds like it takes care of your concern.
Yeah, if staff can come back, with some of those comparables in accordance with, what we're actually allowed to do, yes, with those would be fantastic, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, I think we've got a path forward, correct? Excellent. Seeing 3 thumbs up, that's rare. With that, Mr. Harpster, I see you type, and do you want me to move to Mr. Milne and then you? Or
Oh, no, I'm ready.
Okay.
I was just going to add, with the Dust Devils discussion, that Mr. Ebert, the other owner, ran into an event. He said any council member that wants to, he'll let throw out the first pitch. So get a hold of him and he'll let that happen. A couple things, Director Sarah, and I hate complaining, so I don't know who else to talk to. The cones on Sylvester Street are generally a complete mess. And it seems like Sunday night, somebody's coming through and running over most of them. The big barrier across the road, they knocked that down this morning. I feel weird calling the police about that, but they clean it up Monday morning, but then even by Monday evening, it's pretty messy. The entrances, when you're coming towards the construction area, the way that they begin the cones is just super confusing, and I'm really surprised there hasn't been any car accidents. So maybe it's just something to talk to the contractor about. And then same thing at the Broadmoor interchange, going northbound towards the overpass, Chapel Hill behind you. That merge right there is not very clearly defined at all. And then southbound, coming from leaving the overpass towards St. Thomas Drive, same thing. It's just kind of a hope you don't hit anybody type thing. One question on that, on the Sylvester project, is the contractor finished the sidewalk on the north side of Sylvester. Are homeowners along that side responsible to complete the transition between the sidewalk to their driveway, or will the contractor take care of that?
The contractor will take care of that.
Okay. I door knocked that area pretty heavily, and so I've been trying to not make eye contact with people so they don't ask me about it. That's good to know. Thanks. And the last 2 things. One, I went to Peanuts Park North Thursday evening, and just to see what's up, because I've not been through there in a long time. And there were some guys trying to break into a building right in front of us, so called the police, and just want to give a shout out to the police story because the response time, I'm not kidding, was 30 seconds. And within 30 more seconds after that, there was 2 more officers. And within a minute, I think it was Sergeant Miller called me to get some information. So it looked like one gentleman was at least temporarily detained and emptied out his pockets and stuff. And he was trying to get into Mandor and had a lookout of sorts. And he rode right past us on his bike. And then another officer pulled up and was able to stop him. So it was great to see. And then lastly, the Memorial Pool incident. I just wanted to read a short snippet from an email that I received from Director Rice when I passed along a resident's concern. And he said, "We're diligently working to review the incident, all safety protocols, and lifeguard mental health before we open the pool to the public." And so I just want to say kudos to Director Rice and your staff for prioritizing the mental health of those lifeguards involved. And I don't know, I'm guessing they're part of Gen Z, young teenagers working there. And Gen Z is a generation that is at higher risk of suicide than any other generation before them. And so an incident like that, I could see where, the lifeguard, just a kid, is so shaken up from it that something like that could happen. And so just appreciate staff taking the time to pause and make sure everybody's good and review guidelines and whatnot. So that's all I got.
And if I could quickly follow up to that, I appreciate to thank you. However, that was Chief Crowley's team that came out and helped us support in that incident. So that was truly a team effort. We've had staff from multiple departments working all across for this incident, but thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your patience, Mr. Milne.
Thank you, Mayor. I also want to echo Councilman Harpster's comments. I can obviously relate to the one on Sylvester Street. Sometimes I actually try to avoid it, but the times I actually do use it, I'm always amazed on how close it seems like you're coming, especially at late at night. It does seem like somebody's hit them or moved them. It is what it is, but again, it is surprising how frustrating it is going through that area. And then I also wanted to give a shout out to Pasco Police Department. We seem like we're all doing that tonight, but I had an instance where I had some trespassers on one of my rentals property, and they were trying to set up camp, or they had set up camp. And Officer Kisak came out, and then a whole bunch more Pasco PD came out within a minute, and we're getting all the people off. And so it is a huge help when you see the Pasco police show up and very involved, and again doing a fine job. So I just want to say thank you, and I appreciate how you lead our department. So thank you.
Thank you with that. I see Ms. Barajas.
Did have him go?
He's not got. He's got.
Okay.
Nothing.
It's my turn. I was giving you the opportunity.
I do see Leah's lights on. If you want.
No, she can
Go
go
ahead.
first.
What? You want to defer to him?
And he was first, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay.
Did I miss?
Because I already have spoken, so
Yeah, I know.
I was
So
trying to
we'll
jump
keep
in
it
with with Councilmember Grimm. Yeah, I just wanted to talk a little bit about what Councilmember Grimm said. And I think, what he said is just, it's just proof that we need to have a discussion about a animal shelter advisory board. I know City Attorney Ferguson is kind of being the spotter with the ILA language and, hey, let's be careful. But, I think that just proves the point of, and when we signed the ILA, we didn't really go over a lot of that stuff, or those questions weren't ever really presented in a way. And now, we have a great mascot in Dee Dee, but I believe that's the, $25,000. And I think a lot of families wouldn't have spent that much money yet. We're on the hook. And so it's those things that we can bring up for discussion, whether it's the volunteer program, protocols for euthanization. That's the reason why we need to have this discussion. And so when you do that language of, well, it's the ILA, I find it like you're kind of scaring the council from not bringing this up for discussion in a way. So I just wanted to let you know that's the way I'm taking it. And I hope we don't do that and maybe present it in a more objective, lighter tone, because we can be impressionable sometimes. And, when you see ILAs come across our dais, we're like, okay, everything, we dot the I's, cross the T's, and then we sign off on it. But then we're paying $25,000 for a dog, to be rehabilitated. So, that's the reason why I think this is a very, this is a discussion that just needs to happen across the Tri-Cities. And I think we need to start having those conversations with other cities. And I think we would be surprised, that they would like to entertain this. And again, we're the lead agency, so let's be leaders. I don't think our council should shy away from these hard discussions. I think that's the reason what we signed up for. So, I would like what Councilmember Grimm presented to also be part of that ILA discussion. Let's just combine it, let's get it out there, and then let's vote about perhaps entertaining this along with other cities. Thank you.
Okay, thank you with that.
Sure, if I may, Mayor, just real quick. So I just want to make sure it's clear that my intention is not in any way to slow down the policy choice, the discussion, any of those things. What my concern is to make sure that there is an enormous amount of process that has gone in to creating what we now generally refer to as the ACA. So, I know that while that may be new for some of the folks that have just gotten on council, a lot of this has gone on for a long time. So I just want to make sure that everybody understands that there's a process involved, and I certainly don't have any kind of say or any kind of, any kind of attitude about what should or shouldn't be done related to that. I certainly don't, but I just want to also make sure that the council understands that we do have to be slow. We do have to be careful about this because we are in these what we refer to as interdependent relationships with other folks that can have a lot of consequences. So, and if sometimes I'm too much of the brakes and not the accelerator, that's what I get paid for. So that's the way it goes. And you don't have to like it, but I just want to make sure that we're all clear. Worst thing that can happen is you go into something and I didn't warn you about it ahead of time. So that's my job. And so I don't take a position on that, and I'm happy to make it a priority, and we can start that process. But yeah, it is what it is.
Thank you, Ms. Ross.
Hey, thank you. I do have two announcements, but I do want to refer back to something I did also witness at Peanuts Park Thursday. I was down there around 5 to 6 to do a walkthrough for an event that's coming up that I will also announce on. I did see, and I took a picture of a minivan that was distributing food and what seemed like warm clothing, socks, underwears, kind of stuff. So even though the city and our departments, police departments, or fire department is trying to help clean up this eyesore, we have entities that want to do good. However, they don't realize the bad that trickles behind that. And so maybe we should look into some type of policy. I know there's RCWs out there already, but we need to look into what else we can do, maybe collaborate in some way with these organizations that want to do good, again, like I said, but end up attracting groups of people to this area. So that's what I saw, and maybe approach. And I don't know what it is that we need to do, but that's what I saw, and I'll forward a picture of this organization. It seemed to be faith-based. So again, doing good, feeding, clothing, but it perpetuates the need to clean up after them anyway. I do want to, like I said, one of the events that's happening in downtown Pasco, in collaboration with the city of Pasco and in collaboration with the Colima-Pasco Friendship Agreement. There's a free concert happening in downtown on Peanuts Park Plaza. Free event to the community. There's going to be space available for up to 800 people. Arts will be displayed for purchase if you are interested in that. But again, it's just kind of bringing a social event, family event to the heart of Pasco, to downtown Pasco. So you're invited for this Friday, free event, free concert happening. I'm looking up on my phone here. It starts at 5 p.m. Free concert. There's going to be, again, collaboration with the Mid-Columbia Symphony. The Mid-Columbia Master Singers are going to be there. And again, the symphony is bringing their own maestro, I believe, orchestra conductor from Colima, Mexico. So you're all invited to a free event Friday at 5 in the heart of Pasco, Peanuts Park. One last announcement that I have, Coffee with a Cop. You cannot forget Coffee with a Cop on Wednesday the 26th from 3:30 to 6 at the Hapo Center. And again, thank you, Chief Crowley. Thank you, Chief Roski, for your hard work in keeping the community safe and clean of fires and protected. So thank you again.
Thank you. And thank you, Ms. Bras and Mr. Milne, for filling in for me for these activities with our partners from Colima. Unfortunately, I'm unavailable. I got called back for some fun work stuff. So with that, we're going to move on to item number 7, which is executive session. Even though none's listed, we have a request for it from staff for 15 minutes, correct?
2 hours, sorry.
Your clock turns off after 15.
Well, I do lawyer math, remember?
Yeah, right. So your clock turns off after 15. We can take as long as you want. You can be here as long as you want. But we will call it for 15 minutes. I do need a break of 5 minutes. So let me get through the purpose, which is under, it's, I was told litigation. Is it potential, current, all of the above? Okay, and it's going to be you, the city manager, deputy city manager, city attorney, anyone else? Okay, so that's going to fall under Revised Code of Washington 42.30.110, subsection 1, Roman numeral 1, 2, and 3, to discuss current and potential litigation. Again, that's 15 minutes. We're going to take a 4-minute break to start at 9:05, and we will theoretically return at 9:20. Stay tuned. It is 9:20. We have returned from executive session and we are completed. So thank you for joining us this evening. This meeting is adjourned.